if I only shot 2 20s to 2 30s inch buck a year, I'd be fully content.
Me too. Yeah. I think I could probably be okay with that.
I was thinking a lifetime.
HUNTR Podcast is brought to you by Deer Grow.
Man, we've been using Deer Grow products for a long time. The Plot Start and Plot Boost, more recently Plot Till. Now we've got 3 new liquid fertilizers that have been put in the mix that will cover everything we could want for a food plot program.
It's huge, man. The more food plotting we do, it's like, man, the liquids just make sense. Like whether it's herbicides or the Plot Start and Plot Boost, and now the fertilizers getting mixed in. It's like, man, I can combine all of those in certain cases and do less passes for more results.
I mean, it's all about efficiency. I mean, like you said, less passes. If you're out there treating your beans with glyphosate in the summertime, you can mix in this fertilizer, do that all at once. You have the boost in there to help some metabolism. It's all about efficiency when we're talking about food plots. And really the big difference on these liquid fertilizers is you're bypassing some of these soil limitations, pH limitations, the soil type. In a lot of cases, we talk about dry fertilizers only being available for 17% of what you put down in the first year. These liquid fertilizers straight into the plant are 90% available in the first year. Huge difference in what you're going to see in growth.
It's huge. And so right now you can use code HUNTR15 for 15% off any of the Deer Grow products on their website. And as always,
better food plots, bigger deer. And we're back.
Ew.
HUNTR Podcast, episode 213. As Nick continues to keep us in line.
Thank you, Nick.
And do your part.
Thank you guys for being here, wherever you're listening to us from, YouTube, Spotify, or Apple Podcasts. We seriously appreciate you guys listening and tuning in. It's pretty cool that you do that. Give us a like, follow, or subscribe. One of those will give you a notification as to when these episodes drop, but they're Tuesday and Thursday nights at 6 p.m. Eastern every single week. If you've written us on Instagram DM or the website, we appreciate you guys reaching out. Those are the 2 that we check most frequently, but we do get behind.
I've been pretty good on Instagram. I think we're caught up as of this morning.
Well, that makes me feel good because I haven't checked Instagram in
I think we're caught up.
Many a moon, but I try to stay up on the website. So it sounds like we got that fairly handled.
I don't look at the website very often.
We do have some merch on the website. We have some H2O Guzz. They're like knockoff Nalgene's, but they're pretty sweet. That's what we're using. And some hats and some shirts and all kinds of cool stuff. So we appreciate you guys supporting us in that way. That's pretty cool as well. And other than that, here we go.
We're recording this on October 17th. It's the 24th if you're listening to this on Thursday, at least.
I don't know if I could say it yet, but people are bucks are hitting the ground.
Bucks are dying.
Bucks are hitting the ground. Yep. Big one. We find out here in just a couple of minutes, but as I was just saying, Bomar shot one this morning too. I'm sure he'll drop it before
Illinois.
You get a chance to hear this, but and it's here.
Yeah, this front has definitely helped get a move in. We're about to hit another dry, warm cycle, which, doesn't mean that you can't kill them. You just got to, get on tight to them. Water holes, I think, will be critical again here in the next week as those deer start to cruise a little more and it's hotter. And then I think, we're probably within sight of another end of October cold front here. I hope. Knock on wood.
It's within reach for sure. I like your plan. We don't have to.
What's my plan?
Well, just we were talking earlier on Hunt Companion, what we're gonna do here. So I'm in work mode for probably the next 5-ish days.
Yep,
5-ish days, and then
I'm going to Kentucky tomorrow. It's the Saturday starts the muzzleloader season, so I think Emily's gonna go out and hunt. I'm gonna put her on a 5-year-old. It's bow season still too.
Yeah.
And then my neighbor saw a big buck ?
Yeah.
And tagged me
Facebook
on it
status.
on Facebook.
Yeah. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
It'd be cool if you kill that deer as a result of that Facebook.
Yeah. Again, is the benefits, downfalls of running SD cams. I have no idea. I haven't checked those cameras in almost 3 weeks now. So yeah, I don't know. Don't know what's on it.
Side note, when was the last time you made a Facebook status update?
Do you even do that anymore?
I think so.
Really?
Well, I don't, but people do apparently.
Yeah. Yeah, he's a cool guy. He uses it a bit like text messaging or Twitter, where it's like Like if he's watching a football game, it's like, boy, Cleveland Browns suck. And then 2 minutes later, like, we just scored a touchdown. And then 3 minutes later, he's like, we suck again. And so, yeah, it's kind of funny. My dad would do that. My dad wouldn't have any idea how to use Facebook. He would just be like, I don't know.
It's a little dangerous in that the what's on your mind, which is the status bar, and the search bar are
interesting.
They're easily mistaken. So it's like if somebody's like they're like, oh, let me see what my old high school girlfriend's doing. Check in, and it could easily become a Facebook status. You type their name.
Boy, I better. Now I'm a bit paranoid.
Yeah. So just watch it. Yeah. Just
gotta watch that stuff. So yeah, it's but anyways, so I'm gonna be hunting Kentucky this weekend. I mean, it's gonna be warm, like upper 60s, low 70s. Mornings will be cold, 40s. So we'll see what happens, and then make a plan from there, at least for next week.
Well, let's skip right into it. There's been a 200 that hit the dirt
by a guy that we know very well, Mr. Skip Sly.
That's right.
Pretty cool to get those pictures coming across a few days ago, I guess.
Oh yeah.
And
Skip's a humble guy, and he's like, he don't want to just like tout it everywhere. So I don't even know if those pictures are public. I mean, I know he sent them to some friends and stuff, but
it's a mega.
Yeah, it'll be the thumbnail of this. So you'll see it, and Skip's, I'm sure, has posted some stuff by now. So, but yeah, it's sounding like in the high 220s to low 230s, fairly typical. I mean, obviously that's a gross score, and he's got some flyers and stuff like that. But an absolute,
that's what you call a slammer.
Iowa mega.
Yeah, Iowa mega. So
probably a 3-year-old.
Probably farm deer.
Yeah.
But no, I'll be interested to talk to Skip today and kind of get his take on it, and just kind of how it all went down, but also just anybody that knows Skip or sees the Iowa whitetail stuff, like the dude lives and breathes a lot of work on these farms to culminate in a moment like this, and so excited to kind of just hear his take on it and some history around the steer and kind of how it all went down.
Heck yeah, let's do it.
Bring him in. Well. It's not every day we have a 200-inch killer on the podcast.
It's not every day you see one or able to hunt one. It's actually extremely rare.
Really? You're from Iowa, though, Skip. I thought they're like all over the place.
Yeah. I mean, extremely rare. I would say most people in Iowa, the vast majority go their whole lives without seeing one. So, it's a really rare, special thing to have one around, be able to chase one, and occasionally get extremely lucky.
Well,
what happened with me.
I mean, dude, it's obviously, like Jared kind of said, we know you're a humble guy about it, but I mean, what an accomplishment. So, just maybe let's start with a little bit of like, what was your history with this deer?
Well, if I can first, is this your first? This is not your first, right? You've killed some 200-inch deer.
Oh yeah, I've killed 200-inch deer.
Yeah,
there's a few. There's a few behind me.
Not necessarily when you lived in Michigan.
I did not get a 200-inch deer out of Michigan. I tried to find out where what's the guy up in
Rampola.
Rampala. Yeah, I actually lived in Traverse City for a little bit, and he had the spot where there was just 200s all over the place. But that was the only place in Michigan I know where you can consistently find 200-inch deer.
Huh. So strange.
Can I ask? I feel kind of gross asking for some reason, but like, how many have you killed?
A few.
Okay. You don't have to answer.
And then there's some that are very probably close, maybe a little bit over.
Yeah.
And like we were talking about earlier, I'll let my buddies score them, and I never score them. So several. It's nothing like your last guest a couple weeks ago.
No, like Spook.
Whatever he says, 20 or whatever, which I didn't know anything about that.
Did you listen to that?
Yeah, I actually did.
Kind of interesting.
Crazy. I mean, that's wild.
Eye-opening.
The dude's killed way more 200s than I ever will in my life. Very interesting. And he's obviously got something figured out. I mean, no, that was eye-opening for me. Listen to that one.
Never knew that existed in our hunting world.
No, that's insane.
Mm-hmm. And it sounds like, people will obviously pick out Spook just because he was the one saying it, but there's a lot of people out there doing it.
Yeah, I have met, I met a guy who lives underground with this stuff that you'll never see any of the deer. I think he shot maybe 15. Wow. And he's older. And most of his deer were actually from Kansas, before Kansas kind of blew up and had all the attention. And I asked him now, I said, and he still hunts Kansas. He says, oh, it's a lot of the areas, there's a small fraction of how many of the 200-inch deer and the age class that there used to be. But I think he had shot 15.
Wow.
And up until hearing that podcast, I think that was the most 200s I've ever heard of somebody ever getting.
That's crazy. Yeah, I apologize for asking. It's not like it's a
just out of curiosity,
but it is curious. Yeah, you start hearing about like, oh, for a long time I was just like, well, Adam Hayes killed 4, and I thought that was, and then Josh Belmar, you heard, it's like, well, he's killed whatever
6.
It is, 5 or 6, and then you got a guy like Spook comes out, he's like, yeah, I've killed 20. You're like, and then you start finding out there's a whole, not a lot, but there are guys that are killing like 5, 10 or more of these things.
Well, it's the weird spot because, as like dedicated whitetail hunters, the 200 is like the unicorn, right? It's the white rhino of the group. Like you just, there aren't many of them out there. And like, if you find one, it's a rarity. So when you hear somebody like Spook saying, yeah, I've killed 20 plus, or the guy that you just mentioned, Skip, killing 15, it's like, okay, like there's more than I thought, I guess.
And I've talked to some of those people on their strategy and how to do it. And I'll admit, I don't have the strategy and desire to do what they do to kill that many 200s. Yep. I mean, I just like hunting on stuff I own. I like hunting deer that I know from a young age that I can follow, that I feel like my habitat work.
Yep.
My passing them went into it. If it was just about like, hey, I want to shoot a lot of 200-inch deer, my strategy would be totally different.
Oh, yeah.
And, to travel around all these different states, I don't do that. So I'm handicapping myself, but, it's just a preference. It's not a right or wrong. I just enjoy my experience with saying, hey, I knew that deer since he was 2 years old a lot of times. And I watched him grow throughout the years. And I know I passed him up all these years. I have his sheds, and he lived in my farm. That's rewarding to me. But yeah, I definitely don't think I have the most effective tactic. If a guy said, my goal is just to shoot the most 200s or a lot more 200s, I would change my tactic. But that's not what I personally want to do.
Well, us either. We talked about it after that. And it's like, with all the respect to what Spook and some of these other guys are doing, Jeremy and I just spoke frankly about like, that doesn't interest us either. Yeah. Mm-hmm. 200-inch deer interest us, obviously, but like if somebody would show me a picture of one and be like, hey, that deer's, or whatever, here he is, and there he is. And I'm like, my first thought is not, how do I get access to go hunt that? It's just like, oh, cool.
Yeah,
that'll be cool that's awesome for wherever that's at.
Yeah, it's the pursuit of whether it's a 200 or any buck, it's the pursuit of that buck that really is what trips our trigger. So if it's like somebody else found it, I'm going to go there and I'm going to hunt it. Not saying that there's no skill in obviously getting on that deer to then kill it, but it's like,
there definitely is.
Yeah, but it's to Skip's point, it's like, whether you own the property and farmed it, or you're on public ground and you've just watched them for years and you finally get on. Like did you see Jake Bush killed like a giant 8-point on like Ohio public? He's been after the deer for multiple years.
A good deer.
That type of hunt, I think, for the three of us is kind of what drives the motor.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had a chance to hunt probably 260s, maybe 5 years ago. It was on a little farm that a buddy of mine owned. And he liked hunting, but he wasn't eating up with it. And he's like, he wasn't a super, super skilled hunter. So he said, would you help me hang my tree stands? Would you help me do my food plots? Would you help me set it up? And I did. And I wanted him to get that deer. And he's like, well, why don't you come hunt him? I said, I'm not doing it. I'm not. Mm-hmm. And I did not hunt that deer. I'm like, you go after him.
Yeah.
You try and chase him. And he put an arrow in that thing in the top of his back and didn't get him out of the tree stand. And I mean, But the other thing, it was on a really small piece of property. And I did know there was probably 12, 15, 20 guys that knew that deer was there. And it was just a massive competition and just this massive pressure to hunt this deer.
Yeah.
And that was the other thing where I'm like, I don't want to be number 21 of the guys that are chasing this deer. And I did not go out on that guy's farm where I could have to chase that deer. It didn't interest me.
Mm-hmm.
But this is personal preference.
Yeah.
Not right or wrong.
That's part of it too, the competition. It's like for the same reason, we just enjoy private land, frankly, and we'll do things, to be able to have that exclusive access. Is like, you don't want to be competing with other guys. You don't want to be running into other guys. And it's not fun.
It's just a different element.
It's not fun for us, you know?
Yeah, it's a completely, like, I think it's just managing expectations. So, like, when we talk about, like, our farms or whether it's Illinois or wherever, or even, like, when we're going out to Iowa to hunt, it's like, yeah, I want to go out there and have an unpressured hunt situation and be one-on-one essentially with the deer. Like, here, and it's just because I have a small piece of ground that my kids are hunting. Like, I did whatever, almost 15 miles on the mountain this week just looking for a mature buck. And it doesn't really matter what's on its head as much as, like, I just want the challenge of killing a mature buck in the mountains. And, like, that's a whole different experience that I'm chasing there. Would I shoot that same deer on, like, my Ohio farm or our Illinois farm? No, probably not. But it's a different type of experience that I'm trying to get throughout the season.
Yeah.
And I've hunted farms where there's a lot of hunting pressure, there's a lot of competition, but there's good deer. But the hunters start getting into it and they compete with each other and they get ticked off at each other and there's hunter drama. And I've always said I would rather hunt smaller deer, so lower scoring deer, in a peaceful environment where they're naturally moving, where I don't have all these stresses, than hunt higher scoring deer, bigger deer, but I got to deal with all the people issues and all the drama. I take the less drama with smaller deer every single time. It's about the experience, and it's not about even I can post this deer that I shot and he scores a lot. I want the experience and I want it to be peaceful and relaxing and somewhat natural. So I love that part of it.
I think that's a big point. In fact, the reason I'm kind of hunting these mountain deer this year is I just walked away from 1,000 acres of private land up here because what started as me and the owner hunting it together is now about 8 guys hunting it. And the experience went to shit real fast. Like we were trying to grow 4 and 5 year old bucks in Pennsylvania, which was hard enough. And then you add 6+ more guys back into the fold, and, like, I can't get a deer over 3 years old. And frankly, like, because we were running cameras and I was managing food plots, things that they hadn't done, they were way more effective of killing deer as well. So instead of killing 2 or 3 bucks, they started killing 5 or 6 bucks a year. I'd rather walk away from that and, struggle to a point on public, but be in that natural movement to a smaller scoring animal that maybe is mature, just because that's the experience I want versus, man, like, I'm just fighting with other guys on the same piece of property. Like, that doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, it's why I took a tour through Illinois on all the farms I had permission on, and I took every one of my tree stands down. And said, I'm never coming back to Illinois again. I just had so many bad experiences with hunters and leasing things out and outfitters throwing guys out there and guys shooting all the 2 and 3 year olds I passed and hunts being ruined. And I just watched the whole state go like this in about 5 years. And I'm not saying there isn't great areas in Illinois or it hasn't came back. I'm not saying that, but it just got to be like, I didn't enjoy that experience. So I literally pulled down every single tree stand and said, I'm never going back to Illinois.
Well, we know the feeling. Our level of commitment was not as great, but we went and hunted Southern Illinois the year it was COVID
year.
And in hindsight, it's like, it makes sense that we had such a bad experience because, like, everybody flocked to the woods that year. It was like lowest hanging fruit. It was over the counter stuff. It was giant, piece of public, Shawnee National Forest. And Jeremy and I were like, we're never coming back. Never coming back.
Yeah, I mean, they're very well. I'm sure there were big deer down there, but, like, that was not the experience that I wanted.
Yeah.
We were just fighting everybody to get back.
And I was experiencing the same thing. So don't misunderstand anybody that's listening to this. I was dealing with the same thing. I mean, been so publicized for 20 years now, and every YouTube video I see, they're shooting 200. So that's what all of Iowa's like.
Yeah.
And the amount of people the increase in, the pressure and guys coming out of the woodwork and non-residents wanting to come here. Granted, we limit it. But Iowa's quality has definitely gone down. I mean, we're hurting compared to the good old days. And there's massive amounts of competition and drama and overpressuring and, hey, man, I mean, Mike, I get all the time, hey, my best 2-year-old just got shot. My best 3-year-old got shot that I've been passing or whatever. Not but a 2-year-old or an a 3-year-old. We have the same problems here. I would just say it's not as bad as Illinois. And it's clearly not as bad as Michigan or Wisconsin or Minnesota, stuff like that. So, so it's better, but it's not to say we don't have a massive amount of problems. And I hear people all the time, oh, Iowa has very few hunters, and it's a giant food plot, and it's just, that is the absolute wrong impression of our state. Is absolutely incorrect.
So, Skip, kind of staying on like the Iowa pressure side, one of the recent rules here was basically closing the party hunting loophole for the non-residents. Have you started to see that affect non-resident landowners or anything just from a pressure standpoint in the state here yet?
It will ripple through because a lot of guys were using that to hunt here every year.
Yep.
And a lot of guys are selling their ground because of it.
Yep.
And I didn't even know this bill was coming. A lot of them are like, hey, you did this. Groups you support do this. I had no clue that one was coming. I had no clue. I had nothing to do with it. But once it got enacted, you kind of found out that that's how everybody was hunting. And I would go to town, multiple little towns, and I go to all the local businesses. I know a lot of people in these small communities are like, yeah, I used to sell my tag to a non-resident and supposed to sit with them. And all of a sudden I'm like, whoa, this was far more widespread than what I realized.
Right.
Well, when that changed, now all these non-resident landowners, there's a huge swath of them that put their land for sale or that are going to put it for sale. And I don't blame them. I do the same thing. If somebody told me, you can go to this state and your draw is going to be a way long process, or you can go to Kansas or Illinois or Ohio and get a tag every year, I'd be like, okay, I'm going to take my money out of Iowa and I'm going to buy in Kansas or Illinois and Ohio. I do the same thing.
For sure.
So I don't blame them. And I'd be frustrated too if all of a sudden I'm like, this is what I was doing and now I can't do it anymore. I'd be like, well, I'm taking my business elsewhere. I'm going to go to one of these other states. And that's what they're doing. And I don't blame them for doing it.
I think it seems like the right thing to do for the state of Iowa, though, and its deer herd. I mean, it was a loophole for,
what was the reason?
For a reason.
Do you know? I mean, what was the...
Okay, so there was 2 laws written, and I might have this slightly wrong, but there's two laws written on this a long time ago. And one law actually specified that it was for residents, and another just had a little bit of tweaks in the law where it didn't mention it. So the governor on all of our laws, like hundreds in different categories, said clarify all these gray laws that we don't quite understand and that might be contradicting information. So they changed hundreds of laws to clarify it. And they went back to this law, which was one of countless laws they needed to clarify. And they looked at it and they said, hey, the original language was for resident hunters. So they cleaned it up and they got it correct. They didn't change the law. They just codified the law and clarified the law, which was existing on the books. I might have that slightly wrong, but probably not off by much. And so they didn't have to go through a legislative process to create a law because it actually was always the law.
Got it.
Now, I think their process to get there too, there wasn't a reason for it. It wasn't a hidden motive, like let's screw the non-residents or let's do this. But there was a lot of complaints, like to all the DNR officers, like, hey, this loophole is being abused,
Sure.
Like they're just paying people for their tags. They're not sitting with them. And then the other one where it was abused and there was a lot of complaints was there was outfitters, certain ones, not all of them, but there was a handful of outfitters that would get people in the community to sell their tags to their clients so they could outfit hunts. And the DNR across the state had a lot of complaints about that being abused. So I'm not saying that's why it got switched, because it was just a law clarification, but there was a lot of problems where it's like, listen, I understand, if you legitimately, have a couple guys and you guys are hunting together, that's what it was for. But there was a lot of cases where it was being abused. And it was just hey, I'll just pay this kid in town to buy his tag, and the outfitters can buy tags so they can run clients through there. And the outfitting one especially was one that I had a bad taste in my mouth because, you know, the more growth from outfitters in Iowa, the very little bit of habitat we have, you know, I'm just not a big fan of outfitters, but, you know, we don't need to incentivize outfitters to lock up more land. And all the outfitters that I know, the vast majority of them are locking up thousands and thousands of acres, and they're taking not paid non-residents in there to shoot a buck and to shoot the best high scoring buck, whatever his age is. A lot of times they're not shooting does. And then they're taking thousands and thousands of acres of access away from residents. So outfitting in Iowa, I mean, outfitting in Canada probably works because there's millions and millions of acres. Outfitting in Iowa is very different, where we have just such a tiny amount of habitat here. So uniquely, that's why outfitting in Iowa is just, it's a bad recipe. And maybe 20 years ago, when Iowa didn't have the pressure, outfitting could be sustained. But in today's day and age, when residents literally have nowhere to go, a lot of them, and they're complaining, and that group is getting louder and louder and louder, we can't sustain outfitters like we could 20 years ago. So I'm glad about that part.
It seems like they're just almost competing with like the general public, because it's like anybody can go to Iowa, and as long as you can draw a tag, like, just people have the means of gaining access and going and hunting those properties. Unlike, you know, in Canada, it's like, it seems like a bigger barrier to entry. And I would agree with you. It's like, yeah, it makes sense to have outfitters in Canada because, one, there's more than enough habitat to sustain it. There's not enough hunters that it's going to have a massive impact on it. So yeah, have a business where you go up and you're taking advantage of somebody who can point you in the right direction. But in Iowa, and frankly, anywhere in the lower 8, I don't know anywhere where it's like creating a good situation for the wildlife in that area or for the locals who hunt it.
No, the Midwest, there's no real merit to it other than I just want to make money. Just like a telemarketer makes money. I mean, they have about the same merit. There's no reason for it. It's a whitetail deer. Everybody knows how to hunt them. They're really just paying an outfitter for access to locked up land. Well,
it's kind of a bummer though, isn't it, Skip? Because it hasn't always been that way, right? Like I would say even like 10, 15 years ago, like it was kind of there was a barrier to entry, like when, you know, before Google Maps and before, you know, cellular trail cameras, and like it was, for us, it was kind of the Wild West. It was like, well, if I'm going to go even out of state, let alone to Iowa or Kansas or any of these states, like you would almost have to go with an outfitter. That was the idea. And it seems like that's kind of dissolved as technology and, you know, like I said, Google Maps, all these things have made it more accessible. The need for it has kind of like dissolved in the past 10 years, I would say.
Agree. And, you know, when you get to a tipping point where you're like, the residents, the people who live here don't have places to go, and they're lighting up the legislator saying, I have access to nothing, and the scraps I have left, there's no public land in the state. It's the least amount of public. The legislators are going, whoa, our residents have a real problem. So do we want to incentivize people who don't live here to come here? And do we want to incentivize outfitters to run more non-resident hunters through here? It's not the right thing. And thankfully the legislators understand this, or are understanding more and more. And, you know, and on the flip side of that, I'd say, I have no issue if somebody said, hey, you're going to go on a moose hunt in the Yukon, and it's hundreds and hundreds of thousands of acres. You get lost, you get eaten by a grizzly, go with an outfitter. Sure. Right. I have no problem with that. But to go hunt a 160 acre farm in the Midwest for a whitetail deer, you don't need an outfitter for that.
I just wonder even how, at least when you talk about the outfitting in the Midwest, how sustainable it even is, because, you know, if you go back 15 or 20 years ago, you know, lease prices, either people weren't even leasing their land, or if they were, it was pretty dirt cheap. Now look at the competition for leases and what that's done to cost per acre. Surely the outfitters can afford it because it's a business, right? But at some point it's like, man, you know, it goes two ways. Number one, either they're charging too much to where they're not going to get people in, or what I tend to see in a lot of these cases is they're jamming too many people into that 160 acre block to where that herd can't sustain it. because they have to make the money.
Well, it's almost always the latter. It's an impossible. And I sympathize with the outfitters like in the Midwest because like I'm saying, like it was necessary at one point in time and it was a good business probably. And they probably didn't have to over harvest. I mean, some of them probably had the right intentions or still do going into it. But when you're faced with livelihood and it's like, hey, either we shoot more 2 and 3 year old deer to feed the family or we go out of business. Like, yeah, I mean, it's a losing business model from the perspective of the wildlife,
Yeah.
The livelihood is the only heartstring they can pull on. And I'm not dismissing that. Well, I make my living with that. Well, I could go outfit right now and I could say that's my business, but I figure out different things. I'll farm, I'll do, whatever. There's a million different things. It's America. You can come up with infinite options. And it's just like saying, I opened up a liquor shop or something, and sell cigarettes and all that stuff that are not good for people. I mean, it is a living, but it doesn't mean it's right or the good thing for the state or for the resource. Yeah. And it's not. It's not the right thing for the resource. It's not a good thing net overall. So you say, yeah, there's merit there because somebody's making their living from that. And that's a merit. It's valid. I understand it. But if you weigh it all out, it's a huge net negative to any state to have massive amount of outfitting. And I watched outfitting just blow up in Illinois. Blow up. It ruined that state. It ruined residents' access. You say, what was the net in Illinois? Some guys made their living from outfitting, right? Yeah, they did. That was their livelihood, which is great. What did it do to the net result of the state? All the residents didn't have any place to go. It put lease prices to $20, $50, $100 an acre to lease hunting land. And it was all pay to play. And all the residents that lived there and voted there said, all these places I had, they're all controlled by outfitters now. I'm done. The whole game changed for the worse.
Yeah.
So outfitting is a huge net negative, in my opinion.
The HUNTR Podcast is brought to you by Hoyt.
What can we say, man? Another year back with Hoyt. We're both shooting RX8s. I'm shooting 70 pounds in the bourbon, which I love bourbon.
That's great.
And you're shooting 80 pounds in the straight black.
Blacked out as always, man. I got so I'm shooting the 500 grain Easton Arrow this year. And at 80 pounds, I'm flinging that thing at like 300 feet per second. I mean, it's deadly. Put a water buffalo in front of me and he's done.
I mean, we shot it earlier. You literally put an arrow through a brand new target, like never been shot before.
I know. So one other thing that Hoyt is doing this year is they're making all their own strings in-house. And so the quality is top notch and it just really is something that is setting them apart from their competitors.
Well, what we always try to do when we go to our bow shop, Ultimate Outdoors, is we try to shoot other bows just to make sure that we are really giving everybody a fair chance. Sure. The reality is it's a no-brainer. Hoyt stands above all of them every single time.
Definitely. And so right now you can use code HUNTR, HUNTR, for 20% off any apparel on the Hoyt website. And as always,
get serious, get Hoyt.
So where do you think, like with the current legislation and just environment, like on the landscapes, where do you think outfitting is going in Iowa? Like what seems to be happening with it right now? You said there's still some guys that are occupying thousands of swaths and stuff. I mean, do you think they're running successful businesses? Do you think they're optimistic about the future of that, or?
So I would say they have the data, the resource, and the people with public awareness are not in their favor. They have that going against them. The legislators are more educated. The residents that are hemorrhaging for access, the people that have seen the deer quality go down, and people have nowhere to go, have far more influence than the outfitters who are just saying, well, I'll donate to you, or I'm going to get loud, or hey, be my buddy and give me special privileges. And that's their angle. That's their angle. We want special privileges. I get my livelihood. So when you weigh those two arguments together, the citizens of Iowa, the residents, the non-outfitters, the people that say, I care about the resource, I care about access, I care about if you force the residents out, what it's going to do to the revenue and the economy to the state of Iowa, those people win because they have a more valid argument. The outfitters just have, I'll donate to you, please write a bill to give me special privileges, and I make a little bit of money from that. Their argument it has such little merit that they really are not going to get any traction.
Isn't it funny how easily we default to this conversation with Skip? You're very knowledgeable, and it's fun to talk to you about it. How about this one?
On to crossbows.
Oh, dude! Hey, we got a T-shirt design coming out that you can probably
we'll send you
can probably get behind. Yeah, we'll send you some. What are you seeing with like doe harvest in Iowa? That seems to be something that the more we kind of flesh out the, whatever, all of the above conversation, especially in Ohio, that seems to be a big thing. Like
everywhere, though.
In tandem with, like, if my complaint is, hey, I'd like to see an older age class of bucks, if there is a pushback or there's a very close, if not a bigger secondary issue, is we have too many deer, period. And people don't want to shoot does anymore.
Okay. So Iowa, we shot too many does, but there's such little habitat, and we have a very high amount of hunters, and they rain tags on people. And all of a sudden, our population, our harvest data went in half. It got cut in half. So in Iowa, most of the areas, with a few exceptions, went way too far the other way. Now, in other states, they're like, dude, we got a problem. We have too many deer. Michigan, Ohio, I hear this, whatever, down the list. Even Pennsylvania, I hear this.
Yep.
So what happens there, and here's what I think is missed in that whole discussion about shooting does, and we have a doe problem, is the competition for the less and less and less amount of older bucks is so great. And I think you have a culture in Ohio, Michigan, several other states that's like, I got to get my buck. I got to get them. And now there's less of them. And now there's more competition on the scarce ground I have access to. I got to get my buck, and people are competing for that. And I think one big thing, and it's not the whole picture, but it's one big point where people go, listen, man, I got all these doe tags I can get. I don't want to screw up my hunt on a doe.
Yep.
I want to get that buck. Yep. I'm out to get that buck because all the neighbors have bait piles out. They got corn piles out, and I'm waiting for the buck. And if I start shooting does, I'm going to screw up my buck opportunity. Mm-hmm. And they don't shoot the does because when you have a season that is 4 months long in any of these states, don't tell me you don't have plenty of opportunities to shoot does.
Oh, yeah.
So if people are not shooting enough does, you have to ask why. And I would say there's two reasons. One of them I just said is they don't want to screw their buck opportunity up. It's a pain in the butt. I don't want to, and I only have this much ground that I lease or permission on. I don't want to booger that property up and be chasing a wounded doe through there, dragging them out. I don't want to do anything to jeopardize me shooting a buck. That's number one. Yep. Number two is all these guys have locked up their land with leases and, no offense, non-residents who say, I am going to fill in the blank, Ohio, Wisconsin, Michigan, wherever. I'm going to travel there. I'm there to shoot a buck. Mm-hmm. And when I go to Kansas, which I own land in Kansas, I go to Kansas not to shoot does. Mm-hmm. I don't.
Right.
And I go there to shoot a buck. So when you have these situations where it's all leased up and, it's non-residents primarily that are hunting a lot of these locked up parcels or a very limited amount of guys.
Yeah, we're with you. Ground's all occupied and high competition for bucks and bucks alone. Yeah, does are an afterthought.
Yes. Yeah, so that when your ground is locked up to that degree and there's that competition, that much competition for a buck because the resource is getting more scarce for older age class of bucks, more people are it's a cycle. It's a snowball that just keeps getting worse. And more people lock up ground. The more people that lock up ground, the less deer are going to get shot. Now, non-residents specifically, like I just said, I'm pointing the finger at myself. When I go to Kansas, I'm going there to shoot a buck. I'm not going there to shoot a doe. It's the residents down there that control the doe numbers, not me. Mm-hmm. When non-residents come to Iowa, and I don't fault them. I love them. Okay. So
we're all non-residents here.
Yes. Yes. So I'm not anti-non-resident. I'm just explaining the facts. When non-residents come to Iowa,
I'm literally a non-resident of my home state of Ohio.
Yeah. Less than 10% shoot does, and I don't blame them. When I came to Iowa as a non-resident, I didn't shoot does. Yeah. I came there to shoot a giant buck. Yeah. Well, that's what happens in Iowa. It's less than 10% of all licensed hunters end up filling doe tags. In Ohio, I'll just use a very specific example. If I leased a chunk of ground in Ohio and I lived in Pennsylvania, I'm going to take maybe a few trips over there. Let's just say it's a 5-hour drive. I'm probably only going to hunt there 5-6 different hunts, maybe 2. Maybe I just hunt there during the rut. Okay. Right. I'm just going there to go hunt the rut from the 5th to the 15th. Yep. The last thing in my head, in my opinion, for most people is, during the 15th to the 5th to the 15th, the rut hunt, I'm going to stack up a bunch of does. Very few people are doing that.
Not
and that is
happening,
why there's all these areas in Ohio with super high doe numbers.
Sure.
And, you know, if we remove corn piles, we won't be able to shoot does. That's madness. That is absolutely crazy. That is a non-argument. It is completely incorrect. It has to do with the people, their desire to shoot does, their time to shoot does.
I had a guy, Skip, say that the other day, and I said, well, guess what? They're already not doing it. Like we have the corn piles, we have all these things here. They're not doing it now. We have, people having less and less access, and more, the deer numbers are growing, especially on the doe side of things. They don't seem to be correlated. So like corn piles don't equal doe harvest at all. Because of the first thing that you said.
I would say, if I had to guess, I might be off, but I would say 90% of hunters that are throwing out corn piles in Ohio are doing it to shoot a buck. They are not doing it to be like,
of course,
I need to put this corn pile out so I can shoot 6 does off of it. They're not doing it for that reason.
Well,
therefore,
I think you're 99% right. However, here, let me interject with some personal, because in Ohio, that's where I've been hunting here for, years, but even just this year, I have not shot a doe yet because of the first reason that you said there. I don't want to spoil an opportunity. I'm buck hunting, right? There's a chance in October that I could key in on a buck, and that's what I'm trying for. Yeah, maybe I could get away with whacking a few does. I've had some walk right in front of me, but I'm not in that mode. I don't want to ruin an opportunity. I will have to at some point, because my observation at this point in the season, even though we shot 15 of them last year, is that I'm running into does in every ditch. I'm thinking I'm accessing from way around, and like we still have too many does to. It's making it difficult to hunt, and it's also, I think we just have a shortage of habitat. At this point, probably more cover than food. So I'm observing that. That's my analysis of our property. So at this point, I'm like, so when the time comes, I will dump a pile of corn piles, like a lot of them, and we're going to shoot as many does as I can. And that'll be my tactic at that point. But, and maybe this is where you're going, I wish we had a dedicated doe season in Ohio to do that, because I want to remove that. Yeah. And I know Iowa has that too. And you guys have been successful with that. So
bingo. So here's the thing. We are not allowed to bait in Iowa. I could go out tonight, which is a fairly warm night, and I could go, and I have less deer than Ohio. We are not overloaded with deer on my farm. I could shoot 3 does tonight with my bow. I'm making that up, but that's probably accurate. There's no corn pile. I can go sit on any kind of field edge. I could go sit in the timber where I know they transition through. I could go sit in a pinch point. I could shoot 3 of them tonight. I could go out tomorrow morning and probably shoot 2 or 3 more. When there's that many does in Ohio, you bring me out to Ohio and you say, hey, you're not coming here to shoot a buck. You're coming here to shoot does. This is a matter of a couple days. If you said, get 6 of them.
Yeah.
I'll have 6 does shot in a couple days if that's my priority. Mm-hmm. And my point is that's not most people's priority. But if there's that many does there, which I do believe you, and I do believe that's a problem, with 4 months of season, if you can't shoot enough doe numbers, there's some other problem going on. Yeah. There just is. So it's the priority of the hunters. It's the access. It's all the things we alluded to.
It's no different than when, like, whether you're talking about trying to get a buck to an older age class, or you're talking about antler restrictions or whatever, and people are like, no, like, I don't hunt for the trophy. I'm hunting for the meat. And it's like, well, then go shoot does. And then they're quiet.
Yep. And the last point I would put on that doe discussion in Ohio, if they truly want to control the doe numbers, I think the corn piles need to go, but that's a side thing. I do think they need to make a special season. So when you go out, you're going to shoot does.
I think that's,
and that everybody else is on the same playing field, that you guys are not shooting bucks. You're out to shoot does. Yep. And all those hunters that go into the field, there's no temptation to go, I won't shoot this doe because the giant could walk out.
Yep.
It's a season for does, and you do it at a time that makes sense. Like, Missouri right now is saying, well, we don't want to move our gun season that's in the middle of the rut. Yep. Because it reduced the amount of does killed. And I'm like, that's when you see the least amount of does.
Yeah, you're crazy.
The least. And all the gun hunters first day, second day, third day, they're there saying, I'm not
shooting a
blaring
doe.
my rifle.
Well, that's
I'm
not
gonna
why,
shoot a
Skip.
doe
We talked to
and blow it up.
Sumners. We talked to Sumners just a couple weeks ago, and I mean, he said pretty straight up, it's because, the gun hunter. That's when the gun hunters want the season, and their license sales are dominated by gun hunters. That's what he said. That's what he said.
We have, and I get that. We have millions of gun hunters here that are wildly successful, that have, if they have access to the land, have incredible hunting. And our gun season is 2 or 3 weeks later than theirs.
Yeah.
And we're phenomenally successful during gun season. You don't need it in the middle of the rut. It's madness. And Missouri has a mildly long road in a matter of a few years of educating the public on, guys, this is the scoop on having guns in the middle of the rut. And they have a public campaign to get that message out on how much better it could be, which is just right over here where you cross that line. Mm-hmm. There's no people over there. There's amazing habitat, and the hunting just goes, it stinks. So just to wrap that up, a succinct doe season, not in the rut. That is when you see the least amount of does.
Yep.
Because they're hiding. I've done this for a long time. Yep. That's when I see the least amount of does. Like in October or September, if it, like Iowa, they open, and I'm making this stuff up, but there's a variation of this. And anyway, if you say, hey, the season opens October 1, here, I'd say, okay, then September 20, let's open a doe only season. Or, in the middle of October, when there's not a lot of bow hunters out, like October 15, let's open a doe season then. Sometime it's, sometime where it's kind of innocuous. There's not a lot of people that are out trying to get a buck anyway.
Yep.
Whether it's before the season or at a slow time, make it a doe focus for those states that have that problem. And that's how you solve that problem, in my opinion.
I guess Missouri does have the doe, because remember we had the conversation. I was like, I just said it kind of jokingly, but he's like, well, no, but seriously, he's like, they're considering paying people to go shoot does, like the public, compensating them financially to shoot does.
Okay, if they really want to solve it, they need to go, hey, do we have gazillions of non-residents that are locking up land in our state of Missouri?
Mm-hmm.
Tons of them. Are they paying to do it? Yes. Are they coming and shooting does?
No.
That's your problem.
Yeah.
That's your problem. Yeah. And I can say that because I don't work for anybody. I don't have sponsors. I can say whatever I want. I don't work for a governmental agency, and I don't need to be politically correct. That is the problem Missouri has.
Well, it's a weird thing because it ties very much into a lot of these agencies thinking that opportunity leads to opportunity, right? So Pennsylvania did the same thing. For the longest time, we had a 2-week rifle season for buck only, and then followed by a 3-day doe only season, right? We kill probably less does today than we did when we had that 3-day doe season, because now it's a 2-week concurrent. You can shoot them both. Well, guess what? People are holding out. They're not shooting the first doe they see.
That is a big part of it. I agree with you guys. That's the number one, is they need to be separate seasons. People need to have like does on the brain, basically, and no risk of messing up.
No risk of anything else.
The second or third point that Skip we didn't mention is I do think that there has been a dissolvency. Maybe I made that word up. Decline in there's not as much infrastructure for processing them. I think that, processors, it's a seasonal business. It's just getting tougher and tougher. And so in tandem with, I don't think it's the priority, but I do think it's an important supporting, conversation is that we need help with processing the animals.
Yep. So Iowa, I would say, did the right thing, but they went way too far with it. So they did what all the states like Ohio and Missouri, they're trying to figure all this out. We did it. We lead the way on doing things correctly, but we did it to a fault. And they opened a season up where it was doe only, and we allowed people to donate the deer, called the Hush program.
Yep.
And I would go to these lockers where people would just drop the deer off. There was a mountain of deer. Guys would come up with trailers full of deer. I mean, they didn't care about eating them. They just wanted to go out and just blast, like we go out rabbit hunting. It was rabbit hunting, except the rabbits were 200 pounds, and they'd shoot them at 400 yards. They just stacked them up. And what happened was so many guys got into it because you let them do it. You said it's legal.
Mm-hmm.
And they'd ravage everything. And then the hunters went, hey, alarm bell here. there's no deer around here. You guys went too far and we overkilled it. So we actually got that season removed because you went, hey, there's some areas with some high deer density pockets. Let's address it. And they dropped it so low in some of these areas that the hunters spoke up and said, stop, please stop. You guys went way overboard. So there has to be, in Iowa's probably more delicate because we have such a little area where deer are, and we have a very small deer population.
Skip, couldn't you manage that with just like license allocation? Could you just reduce the number of tags?
Yes. And we respond extremely well in Iowa to that. We just had EHD outbreaks in Western Iowa. They had meetings out there and they adjusted the deer quotas. So the Iowa DNR is exceptional. They're probably one of the best in the country. And they're responding to hunters saying, hey, the resource is really hurting. We had EHD, or, we had too high of tag allocations.
Yep.
And now there's no deer. And they listened and they reduced the amount of tags.
Well, so why didn't they do that instead of getting rid of that season? Seems like the season was the right move.
So now what they did is they reduced the amount of deer that can be shot in a county. They kept the season, but now the numbers have came down so much in some of these regions that they haven't lowered the quotas far enough. They still haven't got them low enough. And they can't figure out why a lot of these counties have leftover tags at the end of the year, even with the doe season. And the legislators asked me, why aren't you guys filling the tags? I'm like, because a lot of these areas don't have deer left.
Right.
The hunters are going, I'm not going to go buy doe tags when there's no deer that I need to shoot.
Yeah.
Hunters are actually responding in a responsible manner there.
Which is fairly surprising. I mean, that's no offense to just the general hunting population, but...
Is it?
Yeah, because I think,
I doubt it's out of responsibility and more out of I don't want to go hunt and see no deer.
Yeah, because if you told me in Pennsylvania, if they're like, hey, you can go shoot $3, most guys are going to go and try to kill $3. I'm not saying they're going to successfully doing it, but that's the guardrail.
So there's some hunter responsibility, but clearly regulations define all, because there still is people that are there's neighborhoods with a handful of deer left, and you give them the special doe season, which we have at the end of the year where they end up shooting a lot of shed bucks. A lot of these neighborhoods, if it's legal, people are going. They don't care. And if you told them, dude, this whole block here, there's only 6 deer left on the whole block, they don't care.
Where are they at?
Legal. It's legal. They're going to shoot them.
They're going to kill them.
And literally, I'm in deer country. I have some friends, some kids who will call me up. I know their parents, and they'll say, hey, can I come shoot some does off your farm? And I get these calls all the time. And I'm like, we really don't need doe shot. We're down. And I'll say, well, your family owns a bunch of land. And they're like, well, the whole family's been pounding it, and they let these people in there. I don't even see deer anymore. I don't see any deer. And people are like, you have areas where you don't see any deer around you? Yes. And they want to hunt my farms. It's anecdotal, but this happens a lot where you say, hey, this area right here has a good deer population. You get 5 miles away and they hit it really, really hard. There's going to be a huge variance on the quality and the amount of deer in 5 or 10 miles. And I'm like, sorry, dude, you guys killed all the deer. I don't need any shot. If I do, I'll give you a call.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a tough spot for, because the state's managing at the state level, and we're all looking at it at the level it should be looked at, which is the micro level, right? Down to the property and or the 640 by 640 block type side of things. And so, if you're looking at that aspect of things and you're trying to think of man, how do we get it? It is on the hunters from a responsibility in being cognizant of what's happening in that area. It's a big ask for, a lot of the guys who just hunt weekends to go kill a deer.
Oh yeah. Well, it's just, we think about it a lot more than 99% of most people.
Well,
that's
why we're talking about hunter responsibility, because the hardcore group of hunters thinks about this and they implement it. And they're like, I'm going to lay off. But we're not the majority, and the minority,
not even close.
Just what's legal. They just want to know what's legal. Oh, I can go out during this time and I can use this weapon. I mean, if you told them here if you told a certain portion of the hunters it is legal, no problem, no tickets, you can use a spotlight out your truck window and shoot them with a 30-06, there will be dudes out shooting them out of truck windows. And they do it anyways when they know it's illegal. So that's why I know if you said, yeah, totally legal, no problem at all, there'd be dudes driving around here all night long with spotlights and rifles. So just because something's legal does not mean it's good or right.
Yeah, sure. Well, you want to talk about your buck?
We can.
So Skip doesn't know how to cape him out, so we can't see the skull
That's
cap.
fine. That's fine.
But
it's big.
Yeah, it's a month. I think I said earlier. You said you were thinking high 220s, low 230s, freaking mammoth.
Yeah, some buddies will be like, "Hey, can I put a tape to him?" And I'm like, "Yeah, go ahead." I really don't
Knock
care.
yourself out. He's big.
He's either 220s or 230s. He's a 7.5-year-old buck. I've known him since I think he was 2 years old.
Wow.
I think he was 2. So,
fairly homebody.
Yes, and there's definitely some interesting twists on where he lives, why he lives there, and what he's done over the years. But and this is a unique one where I almost, because I get where I came from, where there wasn't, I'd shoot 1.5-year-old bucks, and that's about what it was. So I don't want to come across like I don't understand what that's like, but this situation was very unique, and I'll say something that probably sounds crazy, but I watched that deer from 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and at 5 years old, we found his sheds, and he was 207 inches, but he was kind of spindly, and me 10 years ago, I would have shot that deer. Me starting out, I wouldn't even have seen a deer like that, and I would have shot him, of course. So I don't mean it in that context, and I want to be very clear. Like, I know how that comes across. Like, what?
Yeah.
But yeah, he was 5 years old, and he was 207 inches. And that's the year my brother, I think that was the year my brother shot a 7-year-old that was 241.
I remember that.
So, and that makes it easier. I'll admit that too. So I'm not at any point conveying like this is what other people should do, or think I'm that detached to understand how crazy this sounds. But we let him go at 207 at 5 years old at 207, and to my neighbor's credit, we had kind of begged and we agreed, and they said, yeah, we'll let him go too if that's what you're gonna do, and they did. To their credit, and I have to give credit where credit's due. They let him go as well. We were on the same page, which is so rare.
Yeah.
And I said, this is one of those deer though, and it's so rare to have a deer that's five.
Did they skip? Do you know? Did they encounter him and literally pass him, or?
I believe so. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes,
cool.
They did.
That's a
and
rare.
We passed.
That's really rare. Usually you can kind of get them to agree, but then push comes to shove. They're like, oh yeah, didn't think that was that deer.
I get it. And I videoed that deer a lot. Every time he'd walk by me, I have him under my tree stand. And the cool part is I have video of that deer like walking by me in the same area, like year after year after year. Almost like I have video where he's by the same tree, but it's a year later and a year later. And I thought, he's a deer that could be one of those special, rare deer, which it's a huge gamble. But I said, let's let him go. And don't misunderstand. 10 years ago, I never would have let this deer go. But I said, let's let him go. And at 6.5, I look at him, and his body is maybe, with guts and everything, he's probably a 175-pound deer.
Wow.
Well, a big deer around here is 250 to 300.
Wow. Yeah.
He was not doing well. And his rack went from 207 to probably, and I have his sheds from when he was, 3, 4, 5. I have all his sheds, I think. So at 6 years old, he was maybe 180s to low 190s, somewhere around there. And I went, I can't do it. Now I checked with a buddy of mine who's a veterinarian. I said, look at these pictures. Look at how frail he looks. look at how tough he looks. And I said, do you think this deer could live? And he's like 50-50, dude. He does not look good. And I was like, oh, just a bummer. But I'm like, I'm not going to shoot him. I couldn't do it.
Any idea what was up with him that year?
And that's what I asked him. He's like, listen, there's so many different things they could get. You know, they could get a virus. They could get a bacterial infection. They could have digestive issues. They could, there's just so many. They could have a nasty cold when he was in his peak growing season.
No noticeable, like he wasn't shot or anything. It was like some sort of disease or something.
Definitely not shot. Definitely not shot,
wounded by another buck or anything.
No, not wounded by a buck. It was nothing like an injury. It was like, just, you're frail. You're sickly looking, kind of like you, Jared.
Right.
He was a deer version.
Weak and diminished. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So here's where it even got worse is he shed in early December.
Yeah.
And I picked up his sheds in early December and they felt like feathers. Wow. They were light and they were like kind of hollow. And I'm like, what in the world? And to this day, I have no clue what would cause that, but they were super light and they were like half the weight of a normal antler.
That's interesting.
So he shed out early and I said, this deer is probably not going to return.
Yeah.
So, we did everything we could to leave tons of food. I got massive amounts of browse with TSI. I threw everything I could at him to just be like, hopefully he rebounds. I just didn't want him to have any stress, like he runs out of food or doesn't have all. And I just made sure he had every premium thing he possibly could. And I followed that through, which is year round on my farm. I mean, there's 365 days of good, nutritious browse and food and leftover grain and clovers and everything. So I'm like, well, let's just see what he does and hope that he recovers, hope that he's not dead.
Yeah.
And let's see if he's around at 7. And I'm like, he's not going to be there. And all of a sudden he shows up at 7 and I'm like, whoa.
When did he show up, Skip?
Probably July.
Okay.
And I'm like, oh my goodness, it was a giant. And I'm like, and all of a sudden the big part I looked at, his body was giant
back
again.
Yeah.
He bounced back.
Wow.
Yeah.
So his rack and his body were stout. I mean, just huge. And I'm like, oh my gosh, he's bigger than he was at 5 years old. And I knew that even while he was still growing in July. I'm like, he's going to be bigger.
How big of a lapse in like surveillance? Like when did you pull cameras off that property last year from the time you got him back up?
So I'll probably pull them around maybe April. A lot of times when I'm planting, I'll see a camera and I'll pull it down.
Like, oh yeah, forgot about that one.
Yeah. And I'll find cameras that have been there for like 3 years.
Oh yeah,
gotta love those.
Yeah. So
the soakers.
Pulled cameras around April and then put them back up sometime around July. And right away we started getting pictures of him. The neighbors had pictures of him. He looked healthy, and he was living in the same area he always did, and that's not where he ended up being. But he was doing the same thing as he had for all these consecutive years. Now, in his 7th year, he totally changed where he lived, and I shot him on a totally different part of the farm that I never would have expected.
The HUNTR Podcast is brought to you by Lone Wolf Custom Gear.
Man, Jared, we are tree stand fanatics, and I think the one thing that we have learned over all these years is to kill big bucks, we got to be mobile. We've been hunting out of Lone Wolves for many years, the original Lone Wolf, and then obviously with the custom gear stuff, we're using the 0.5 and the 0.75. Yeah. And the one thing that we talked about is like, what if there were no cables? Here we are.
I really just don't know how you can beat it, frankly. But, a lot of that came, too, from a relationship that we've built with the DeQuistos. We've had both Cody and Andre on the podcast a few times. The passion for hunting, the outlook on the sport and stuff, I think is eye to eye with how we look at it. Everything that has gone into building this brand and to building these tree stands is something that we want to be a part of.
This is the 40th anniversary of these guys creating tree stands that have been critical to how we hunt whitetail deer today. If you look over the past, you'll see Andre's designs being implemented across so many stands over the years. such a cool thing, but really has changed the way that we all hunt whitetail deer from above now.
Right now, you can use code HUNTR, HUNTR, to get 7% off anything on the entire website. Be the lone wolf.
Any social dynamic there you think that led to that? Like, was there
Yeah, just tell us about the deer. What was his like nature? And
So at 6, because he was sick, I mean, this would be common sense to 99% of people, like very timid.
Yeah.
Didn't chase does, nothing.
Yeah.
He was just always out eating.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
Trying to survive.
Yes, just trying to survive. At 7, I thought he would go back to being fairly aggressive. I thought he would go right back to his home area. And into the very late parts of September, it's youth season, and the kids, absolutely no chance. I would never let the kids shoot that deer. It was completely off limits. So I just said, let's leave it be into late September. And then October 1 is when season for the adults opens. And I did not hunt for that deer. I didn't hunt in that area. The neighbors were hunting for him. And I just stayed out of there. And the area he was in, and I told the neighbors, they said, listen, if you shoot that deer, I will shake your hand. No hard feelings. I hope you get him.
I want to shake your hand.
And I mean that. Now,
yeah.
if I'm being real, I'd be like, congratulations, with full honesty. I'd be like, congratulations. And part of me in the back of my head, which I think anybody, if they're being honest, would say this, be like, dang it, I wish I would have got a crack at him.
Of course.
But sure. I wouldn't be mad in the slightest if my neighbors got him. It's fine. That deer was on the list.
Yeah, you can have both emotion. You can be happy for somebody and also bummed that you didn't get it.
Yes, and they passed that deer. So I feel like, whoever gets him, it's cool. I've shot good deer before. If I don't get them, I mean, how many times I've had deer I'm after that wind up dead or poached or die of EHD or whatever. I mean, I'm kind of used to it in a way. It still stings, but it was fine. But they hunted them pretty hard, and to this day, I honestly don't know if they ever saw him or what happened, if they were on their trail camera. I didn't want to ask. At that point, I'm like, I just don't want to ask.
See on the other side.
It doesn't matter.
Yeah. I didn't want to know, and I didn't ask. So,
but you would have heard. You would have heard if they killed him. They would have.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah,
for sure. So I did have some trail cameras in his core area there where he always was, and October 1, when season opened, wasn't on camera. October 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, he went 10 days gone. He had never done that before. He was always in that area.
Which was Skip? Can you describe? I'm sorry to cut you off. Can you describe like the kind of what he was living in? Is just like a cedar pocket? Is he living in a ditch? Is it a big piece of woods?
I'd say he was living in a pretty big piece of woods that is fairly close to another neighbor, and that was his core area. So he could either, flip of a coin. He could be on us, and he was living really close to the fence, or he could be on them. So He lived probably in the timber, in that area, which is, a mix of scrub brush, cedars, and then hardwoods with, TSI oak timber. And then, that farm has like just ag ground where who knows, he might go to this alfalfa field that's 100 acres. He might go to this cornfield that's 50 acres or whatever. I mean, I actually don't think I definitely didn't have his, where he fed down at all, where some deer I do, some deer I don't. I didn't. I just knew this is his core area. This is probably where we'll shoot him. And I even said before season, I said, I bet you 70% sure the neighbors will get him, because I kind of had a feeling that he was on them more than us. And then he just went completely MIA on the cameras, and he stayed MIA. He stayed completely off the radar. I had no clue where this deer was. There began the whole guessing game and a totally new strategy, which finally worked out.
Do you think he was in there, Skip, and like avoiding certain areas, or do you think he like maybe shifted and then
avoiding the cameras is what he means?
Yeah,
I think he was gone. I think
shifted out.
Yes, I think he shifted out because he moved 3/4 of a mile away, maybe a mile away from where his tiny little core area was.
Yep.
Into an area he had never been before. And I did not have him on camera. I didn't have any clue where he was. And I was literally, instead of hunting, I would go sit, like one time I sat at the cabin on the farm, it's like it doesn't matter. It's just a little shack. And I would sit on there and I would glass all over these fields. And then there was a pond. I'm like, well, it's really dry. Maybe he'll come to the pond. And I didn't see him then. And I would just sit kind of like in spots where there was really no chance of shooting a deer, but I would be able to see somebody. I was just trying to find him because he wasn't on camera. And my son was out trying to shoot a doe on a really, really hot night. He said, "Can I go shoot a doe?" I'm like, "Yeah, just stay on the edge because you're not probably going to shoot a doe." But he just wants to go out, even if he's not going to shoot anything with his bow. And possibly, and this is young, this is kids, possibly some, maybe not. I don't know. Super, super dark. And I thought, well, maybe he's there, maybe he's alive. But giant buck, you know how that goes, especially even with adults. I saw
lights fading. Yeah.
And that giant, the 200-inch deer turns out to be 130. So I'm like, I didn't even put really that much credence in that. I really didn't. And then after that, I just said, if he's around, I kind of ruled the places out. Like I know he's not here. I know he's not here. I know he's not here. So I think he's either in this, or this spot. So I said, let's start rotating based on the wind. And when the conditions are perfect, going into those spots where I have a hunch he could come out, and only hunting it when it's really ideal. Barometric pressure's up, the temperature's down, the wind is good. And we'll just pop around the few spots I think he could be in. And the first time I tried it, worked out.
Popped right out.
That's it. The first time you tried it, you stumbled right in on him.
Yes, and I didn't think I would.
What was he doing that night when you saw him?
So I brought my son out with me, who just wants to be out. He shot his bow buck, management buck, biggest buck I'd let him shoot. He had a great season. He's tagged out this year.
Skip, go into that just for a second, because I know we dive into that a lot, and people might hear this and say, rewind, Skip. Wait a minute. Like you said, this buck's completely off limit to your kids. Like, what kind of dad is that? Explain your stance on that.
I'm a heartless SOB. No. My son gets it because we talk about this stuff all the time. Yep. I'm like, listen, son, when I grew up, I didn't see deer. I shot 1.5 years deer. Here's the picture of my deer. When he's looking at deer every night that are bigger than the biggest buck I shot as a kid, I said, I can't bring you back to Michigan to make you experience difficulty. I can't do that, but I'm still going to explain this to you. And he's a smart kid. And I'm like, and the other thing is, he's out here working with me. He's helping me set stuff up. He helps farm. He sees how much work we put into it. Mm-hmm. Can I replicate the difficulty that I had hunting when I started with no mentor? My parents didn't hunt, nobody to teach me. I can't. I can't duplicate that, right? But I can handicap him and bring him to spots to hunt, because he's hunted for 4 or 5 years now. Bring him to spots that I know he's not going to shoot a buck. Yep. I know I can send him to spots where I'm like, you're not even going to get a doe in range. And that kid has had just tens to probably hundreds of hunts put in where he didn't shoot a thing. A lot of times he didn't see deer by design.
Yep.
And then, he shot a bunch of does, because I didn't want to be like, yep, there's a 180. Go ahead, son, for your first deer. Not happening. Mm-hmm. So he shot a bunch of does, and then I'm like, okay, you can shoot this 8-point.
Yep.
We can go after that. That's old, and he got that. And then he shot a older 10 point that was maybe 125, super old buck. And he just graduated his way up. And this year, you know, was his biggest buck he had ever shot, but it was 4 or 5 years into it. And I mean, he shot clearly a bigger buck than I had ever seen at this point. But he also knows there's giants, you know, there was a giant out there, and there's one other big one on my farm still to this day. I don't mind saying it. That's like a huge 8 point with like junk and like these great big brows. It's an adult deer. I said, if you see that, he said, Dad, can I shoot that giant 8 point? I said, no, you're not shooting it. He said, okay. He said, well, but he didn't even care though. He's like, but I can shoot that wide one. I said, yeah, you can shoot the wide one.
So you're taking him up the ladder.
Yes. Yeah. So he calls, he texts me. He says, hey Dad, that giant 8 point, he's right under me. And I just laughed. I was like, yeah.
Well, it's impressive, man, because, you know, it's, you know, anybody listening to this that's a dad or a mom, and, you know, you want your kid to be successful, right? Like, you want to be there as a supportive parent to get your kid successful, but you can't hold their hand through everything, right? You can't make it to where it's just, you know, delivered on the silver platter.
Yes, success comes with hardship. You know, if you want to truly have sustained success and sustain interest in this sport, it has to come with difficulty. And now it's awesome. It's awesome. Now, part of me worries just a little bit, but now I send him off. He's on his own. He's like, Dad, I'm going to go hunt this tree stand. And what's the first thing I say to him? Wear your safety harness. The whole time you're off, and I'm freaked out as a dad.
Yeah, for sure.
And I think back to myself when I started, of course, safety harness.
No.
And it freaks me out. But then he sends a picture when he gets into his stand, and I see the safety harness on there, and I see him by himself, and I go, oh, that's awesome. And he loves it. He loves it. He just wants to go out. And even to this day, he's like, can I go out this weekend? Even though I can't shoot a buck, I'll shoot a doe. I'll just go out and sit. Now he's on his own, which is great. I love that part. And then, you know, we had one opportunity for him to come and sit with me on our guessing game for this big deer, and he was with me. Are
you in a tree stand for this?
Yeah.
Yep. And he's hanging next to you, or it's a double?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So, sorry. We actually did hunt for this one in a blind, where both of us could sit together. And I meant for this spot to kind of be an area where I could still see a long ways. But it was next to some really, really dense cover. So yes, sorry. We were in a blind together, which I never shoot deer out of blinds, like rarely, but usually I'm in a tree stand. I like tree stands far better. I just like the whole experience. But this spot, there was no place to hang a tree stand.
Yeah.
It was really brushy, and we sat there and watched a handful of does come through. We had some bucks pop out, and I'm like, oh, you know, just the constant, oh, is it him? And no, little stuff. And it got to be maybe a half hour before dark, and I'm going, where am I going to hunt tomorrow? And I was trying to guess. I was literally guessing in my head where he might be. And I knew where I was going to hunt the next day because I looked at the wind, and I'm like, nobody has been in there, not one time. I'm going to try that spot tomorrow. And the spot I hunted, nobody had been in that area one time. And that's why I hunted these spots too, because I'm like, they're unpressured.
Yeah,
nobody has been screwing these places up. And a buck that's 7, generally, if he gets overpressured or you goof him up, is going to find areas like that where you're like, where he's like, I don't get messed with here. So about 30 minutes before dark, I'm just slowly starting to put stuff in my backpack and daydream about tomorrow. And one thing that went through my head, I'm like, dang it, I think I'm going to find him tomorrow. I just had a feeling like tomorrow was the day. And I'm like, oh, but Charlie's not going to be with me. And that kind of bummed me out. And all of a sudden a buck pops out, and I look up, and Charlie looks up, and I go, oh. At first we thought it was him. I go, oh, nice 10. And all of a sudden Charlie looks behind him. He goes, Dad, there he is. And this went very, very, very quick. I'm like, oh my gosh, my son spotted him, and that deer beelined it right to us, right in front of us, straight on, started making a scrape straight on.
Oh,
Could have shot him straight on, easy. Never would do it, never. And I'm just like, and he's scraping and
how far away at this point?
25 yards.
Ugh.
Were you guys filming?
No.
No. Okay.
I don't care.
Yeah. Okay.
Charlie actually likes the film. I just don't care. And he said, Dad, I think it's fun. I think it's cool.
Yeah, it is.
It's okay. Then you film.
Yeah.
And he's got that hunt on Midwest Whitetail, the one he shot with his gun. And now he's on a bow, but you can look at that on Midwest Whitetail. He's like, I like film. I said, oh, great. That's awesome.
Sure.
Yeah.
Just not my thing.
Yeah.
And even my son's like, well, I could film. I'm like, who cares? It's more important what's in his mind, because it was recorded in his mind forever. So he's making a scrape, kind of rubbing stuff. And finally he turned, and he maybe had turned for 5 seconds. Boom, done. And over with. I mean, perfect shot and piled up not far away. And I'm like, me and my boy were just going nuts.
Yeah.
Just going nuts. And yeah, I couldn't believe it happened.
That's wild, man.
Still really fun. And like, I always say this kind of stuff, like, don't hunt for the reason of like posting your buck and just so you can text it to your buddies or just so you can make an Instagram post. That after 30 years of doing this, it was still amazing, just super fun. Having my son with, way bigger deal. And it was just an amazing experience. So, I mean, I was still shaking adrenaline. I called my brother, and I could hardly talk. And I mean, I just sat there just kind of with my hand over my face for several minutes, trying to almost like calm myself down, and just a amazing experience. And then my brother came down, and we get to hang out, and then bring him back and clean it up and take some photos, and told a few people.
Yeah.
Few people, but I'm usually the one traditionally so I'm very consistent on this. Like, I shoot a buck when I do. I don't, it's not the first thing I do is send pictures out or post something or tell a bunch of people. I usually just keep it quiet and just take in the experience.
Soak it in.
That's far more important for me.
The HUNTR Podcast is brought to you by Sever.
Well, one of the biggest things that we always talk about is what our arrow setups are. And this year we're shooting the Sever broadheads. I think we're both shooting the new 2-inch titanium broadhead. And so, we're huge proponents of expandables. And I know we've had this argument back and forth with people, but we're
right and you're wrong, and you just need to accept it.
We just want to have a giant wound that pumps out blood. That's the bottom line.
We build our arrow setups and shoot bows, to maximize penetration, and we shoot broadheads that are going to give us the best blood trails, the most hemorrhage possible. And so part of those setups is we're also shooting the Easton arrows here coming up pretty soon. So we've shot the Victory in the past, and there's all kind of great arrow shafts on the market, but like we're looking for a whole system from broadhead to arrow components to the arrow shaft itself. And the more we look at some of these Easton shafts and the components that go with them, that setup's going to be really deadly for us.
Yeah, I'm actually using the Easton traditional axis right now in my traditional setups for both my recurve and my longbow. I've got a 100-grain brass insert on those, and then obviously I'm using a fixed blade broadhead on those specific shafts.
Right on.
So, but yeah, our goal is always to be shooting the best broadhead that we think is going to be the most lethal for our setups. We've done plenty of research. We believe in the Sever broadheads, and we hope you would check them out at Sever Broadheads as well. So this was kind of the first move in this chess match of like, I got to find this deer, I'm going to get on this deer. Obviously you said like, hey, this is a spot that nobody sat, but like, what else were you thinking about in your strategy of like, this is the first place I'm going to go to? Like, was it acorns were falling? Had you seen other bucks in there? Like what were the triggers that basically said, this is the place we're going to go sit first?
Really simple. To me, it's simple. Maybe to some other people it's not, but just a remote part of the farm that nobody ever goes in. It's super thick. There's everything. that a deer could want. There's crops, there's alfalfa, there's some clover plots, but then, there's acorns. It's like a perfect place.
Yep.
And, it's just a remote part of the farm that the deer never get disturbed. I have not walked in there for months. I did go do some timber stand improvement in there and created some more bedding areas over the winter. And traditionally, there's always a mature buck in this spot every year. So I just thought, he's not here, he's not here, he's not here, he's not here.
Yep.
There's 3 spots left in my brain that I'm like, he has to be in one of these spots that traditionally have had mature bucks in the past. And if there's a mature buck in a spot once or consistently, there usually always will be. And that's why a lot of the tree stands I have, you're like, how long has that tree stand been there? 15 years. I change the straps, make sure it's safe, but it's always going to be good.
Yeah.
And the next mature buck's probably going to do what the last one did. It's not that complex. So yeah, now if I had gone into the 3 spots in my head that I kind of thought he was at, and I had gone in there and hunted it a bunch, like warm days when I shouldn't have, or when the wind was like, it's kind of blowing into the bedding area, I would have ruined it.
Yeah.
Would have absolutely ruined it. And sounds like common sense. It sounds like common sense, but a lot of people can't grasp that.
Yeah.
And I will just add one other fine point on this. Hunting mature bucks in October is so hard. It's threading a needle. And here's what people don't quite understand. Yes. Are they killable in October? Of course they are. They are. But their movement is so minimal. So if you're going to target one, by definition, where you set up is probably 200 yards from where that deer's bedding.
Yeah.
So if you just go a little too far into the timber where he's bedding, you're done.
Yeah.
If you blow your wind in the wrong spot, you're done. He probably has 200 yards of travel. So it's threading a needle trying to get this deer within 15 yards or 20 yards or whatever. And I think most people take the October approach and they screw their hunts up. And that's a majority of people. It's very, very hard to thread that needle. And I'm not saying I don't screw things up, because every time I go out, it's somewhat of a gamble. He could come out over there and I could screw him up. I mean, that's part of it. Nothing's 100%. But it is you got to dot every I and cross every T and do things kind of, I'm not saying perfect, but almost perfect, or it's not going to work out.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing when you get into those kind of chess matches, especially with like a specific deer versus like, hey, I'm going to go in here in hopes of, a 4+ coming by. Like when you're hunting that specific deer, in some cases I'm like, man, I feel laser sharp. Like I feel like I'm making the movements correctly. But in other times I'm like, it's the needle in the haystack.
Well, Skip, did you have a camera on that scrape?
No camera there.
Just no camera in that area.
No. I mean, he made a scrape under some random oak tree. I mean, he was making scrapes all over thing. And maybe he had been coming out there several times, and it's just like I didn't have a camera there. And I probably rely on cameras significantly less than some people. Like I don't need a camera, or I don't use a camera. And I'm not saying one way is right or wrong. I'm not going down there. But I don't use a camera to define when I go hunt, or really to hone in on, okay, he's coming through here at this time. I just need to know a deer is in the area. And then as long as I just have like confirmation that he's there, then I can kind of make my strategy, and I bounce around different spots based on the conditions and not over pressuring it. And in this case, I didn't even have that though.
Yeah.
That was one tool I was missing, was like recent information saying he was there. I didn't have it.
Because if you were going to have a camera in that spot, it would be on that scrape, right? Like would make sense. It's like, hey, I set the scrape up so that he would come hit it. It would make sense to have a camera. It's within bow range. It would make sense to put it there, right?
Yeah. And if you think about, all the possibilities of where some of these deer could be, I mean, I could be like, I'm around 500 cameras, or 50, or just an obscene amount.
Yeah.
And really most of my cameras are just set up like, okay, I know the deer's alive. I know he's in this general area. And that's the depth of knowledge I like getting from a camera. That's about it. Yeah. It's a tool for me. Just use a certain way, and it's not a right or wrong. It's just how I use it.
Yeah, for sure. Was it a clover plot?
There was clover, rye, oats, peas, just my blend that I run with a drill where I pop around the farm and all the little open areas and damaged crop areas. I drop so many different plots around my farm.
Yeah.
A lot of guys would be like, well, you're spreading the deer out, and you're giving them too many options. I do. And I actually do that for a purpose. I like that.
Yeah.
I like giving deer safe areas to be at. I like where I have to, say he could be over there. I could be missing out. I don't want just
make
one
it too
plot
easy.
or two plots. Yeah. And I actually think it makes it better. I think it makes it, so, if you have one plot, the deer are going to browse in there and they're still going to leave and they're going to wind up on your neighbor's ground or something. So if I have lots of small different plots in my farms, it's just more time they spend within me.
Yeah.
Yep.
And the more time they're safe. It has nothing to do with killing them.
Yeah.
In reality, it's about keeping them safe. In actuality, it does make them harder to kill. So I would say I do handicap myself a little bit, but there's a strategy there why I do more plots as opposed to do less plots so you can target them and don't spread them out. But it's just my tactic, not right.
Based on your account of the story, it's like, doesn't sound like maybe he took a bite or two, but he wasn't feeding. Like he kind of came straight to the scrape.
This is going off my fuzzy memory of adrenaline. I do not think he came out there and took one bite of anything food. He was not doing that. He was following this other buck, which also I don't think he fed it all either. They both came out there and they were making scrapes.
They're on a mission.
And and you go, how many deer did you see that night? I don't know, maybe 15 or 20. He was the last deer that was coming out. Maybe something would have come after him, but that other buck, which was maybe a 3 or a 4-year-old, came out and that thing stayed back in the timber, and that's where we spotted him. And he watched that other buck come out for a decent amount of time. I don't know because I can't put time into this, but he watched that other buck walk out. I mean, this was a very, very smart, very cautious deer. And when I watched him, how careful he was come out there, that's when I knew that's
terrifying. It's terrifying. It's terrifying when you see him being that methodical. You're like, what am I doing here? That's when you start feeling pretty naked and exposed in the tree and stuff. You're like, I'm under equipped.
You could see it in this deer's body language that he was smart, he was keen, and that's why he was where he was. And he wasn't in his own home, his typical home location. He knew better. I mean, he's a 7-year-old buck.
Yeah.
Outsmarting a 7-year-old buck is so hard. I don't care if you've killed them, a handful of them or never seen one. They're just anybody's hunting abilities, whether it's through the roof or bottom of the barrel. Hunting a 7-year-old buck is just so complex and difficult when they are that really alert 7-year-old and a truly smart 7-year-old. And he definitely fit that category.
Well, I was hunting one last night in Ohio, which is a super rare thing that you've probably never heard me say. And he's a 6-point. He might score 130 inches, but he's a 7-year-old in Ohio. I have never seen that deer do the same thing twice, not once. And all the encounters or sightings I've had of him are in, easily a 2.5 mile radius. I mean, it's like he could be over here one day and then he'll be like 1.5 miles this way a day later. And I'm just like, is the deer even huntable? But dude, I was going to ask you, what do you think of, it probably happens more than just we talk about for whatever reason, but you said he was with another buck. What day was it? Well, I guess I won't ask you that.
A couple of days ago.
Yeah. I saw 2 bucks, what I think was about 4 and a 5-year-old, 2 days ago. And they were also together, clearly and I know that they were bedded within 100 yards of where I first saw them. So they got up together and came out in this food plot. And it's like, I don't know what to make of seeing these big bucks together, on October, mine was on the 16th. I just,
It's obvious gay deer.
Yeah, right. You think they're boning, huh?
Yeah.
I will say they both have a broken brow tine, and it's the opposing one, so they can lock and form a
locking in.
mega horn.
They're
spooning
way.
their antlers.
It's obvious the gay deer. Yeah, a couple Harris voters.
The flag was a dead giveaway.
Yeah.
So my opinion on this, or my gut reaction, would be like it's probably two bucks that are not in the same pecking order, and they're, you know, it's not like they're two uber dominant bucks, right? One subordinate, one might be like, hey, you got a 6-year-old that is the dominant buck. He knows he is, nobody messes with him, and he might be with a 3-year-old that knows he's a 3-year-old that's like, yeah, the 6-year-old would whoop me, and they know that the dominance is set up. So that would be my suspicion. When you see those bucks together, I just, in my opinion, tried to read a deer's mind. I think you will not see right now like two super aggressive dominant bucks hanging out together like buddies, like they were maybe, a month and a half ago.
Yeah.
That's when that stops.
Well, and I think that's what we kind of were talking about with the two that you saw is like both of them.
That flyer buck is definitely subordinate.
They just seem chill. Like, neither of them were like walking out in that field like, I'm about to kick somebody's ass. They just kind of walked out and just were on a mission doing their thing. Like, you can tell. And I mean, I've seen 3-year-olds already this year where like they walk into a field, and if there's a buck in that field, they're going to go fight them. That's just their attitude. But yeah, I mean, I think when you start to see some of these other deer, they're just, they know there's a respect there, but they're not there to fight and burn energy.
Agree. Very much like people.
Yeah.
I mean, you got dudes that, man, I went out with this guy, he gets into a fight all the time.
Every time.
Probably like Jared.
Yeah, every time. Yeah.
And then you got guys that are just real chill. I mean, deer are very, very much the same way, in my opinion. Like, the personalities are so wildly different. Their caution levels, their aggression, and even based on certain years, like, if you saw that deer last year, you'd say he is timid, had no interest in rutting, probably didn't want to be around a dominant buck because he felt like I'd get whipped. So, it's very interesting to see all the different personalities in certain deer. If you follow him through the years and you like, hey, I saw that deer at 2, 3. I know how he acts. 2, 3, 4, 5. There's certain deer where I'm like, if I call at him once, I know that deer is going to come running. I know he is. Mm-hmm. And then there's other deer where I can tell you, like, I'm going to call at him. 99% chance he's not going to respond at all. Case in point, I mean, the one buck that we're still chasing, we've tried calling to him. My brother's been hunting him. Nothing. No interest. Not an aggressive deer. But this deer is also old. And I mean, he comes out 2 hours before dark, but he only comes out to this little area. And if you were to go hunt 500 yards from there, you'd never see him. He comes out 2 hours before dark almost every day. He is cautious, and he'll just kind of work around this area, move to the south, and then he'll come right back the next day. He's maybe traveling maybe a 400-yard path back and forth in a day. And, I think my brother will probably get him. I mean, he's definitely not 200, but, and there's the other thing with a 200-inch deer. Now that deer's gone, there's not another 200-inch deer around here.
Yeah.
That's it. Once in a while you have one on rare occasions, and then you can go through droughts where, there's a 160 this year. I mean, the rest of the deer that we're hunting are older, but they're not, super high scoring deer, and there's no other 200-inch deer that I know of. And somebody big, he's full of baloney. I will not be posting another deer over 200 inches this year. I can assure you, unless some freak thing happens where like someone moved in or something. But we're hunting one that's maybe 160s, 170s.
Dude, what happened to that deer, Skip, that you last year? The one that was like in a real small.
So I had I had one deer that cruised through that was an absolute giant that we never knew where he
That's
came
what I'm
from.
talking about. Yeah.
He vanished. And then there was another one that kind of lived on the neighbors that would cruise through. And my best guess, without any proof, but with some information, is that deer lived very close to the road. And he was very visible from the road.
Mm.
And if somebody said, hey, you don't definitively know, you can't win this in like, a court or something, you can't prove it, but lay $100 on the table and bet on what happened to that deer. I think he got shot off the road. I think he got poached. I really do. And there's some guy, the info I got, there's a guy that hunted some public down the road that said he got a mega giant. And he shot it on that public. And I can say with certainty, again, you can't prove this, but I mean with 100% certainty, that deer did not go over there. That deer never went to that place. And he is keeping that under wraps, won't share pictures, but we've got loosely some mutual connections to this guy. And I said, is this the deer? And I think it is. And I think that guy poached it. Can't prove it.
Bummer.
I'm not bitter. I'm not super bitter or like,
Yeah.
It happens. I'm gonna get a deer.
Yeah, just keep
poached
the
out here
number.
again.
Sure.
Keep the number.
Yeah, but it's also like you just kind of you want to know, right? That's the stuff that keeps you up at night.
Closure.
I mean, if somebody just went out there and killed the buck, it's like, hey, yeah, I wish it was me, but awesome,
I want to shake your
congrats.
hand.
I'll shake your hand, right? But when it's like,
I wouldn't shake his hand.
yeah, when the logic doesn't add up, you're just like, man, I really just want to know at this point.
Yeah, I think I do know. I really do. In my head, I know what happened. Can't prove it, but that's almost as enough closure as I need.
Yeah.
I feel a bit naive to that, Skip. Like, back in the day, I mean, I think it made sense. Do you think that there's still just a pile of poaching going on out there?
Yes.
Really?
More than anybody would know.
Wow.
Yeah, I talked to DNR officers across the state, and I'm like, give me the scoop. What's up? So here's another one. I talked to a lot of them. I'm like, hey, I got a specific question. How often are you seeing this one? Where guys are out coyote hunting with thermals in the middle of the rut and in, October, November, December, and they're shooting bucks. Well, thermals and night vision, and I mean, I look through thermals when we're coyote hunting.
Oh, yeah.
I can see racks with a thermal. Well,
absolutely.
A rack doesn't have blood in it. How can you see it? No, I can see racks.
Yep.
These dudes are shooting deer with thermals.
For sure.
Now, do I think it's somewhat rare? I do. I don't think your average town hillbilly is going and spending, $5 or $10 to get all set up with a rifle and a thermal and a night vision, all this stuff. I don't think they're doing that. But I think the guys who are really intense, which are always have been those kind of hardcore group of poachers that are like, I'll do whatever I need to do, and I'm going to travel to certain areas and try this stuff. I know that is going on. How widespread, I don't know. How much does this stuff worry me? I just don't let it. I just say it's part of it.
Yeah.
If in my farm, I screen the roads. I plant cedars along the road so people can't shoot into my farm. Now, you go across to the neighbors and it's wide open and deer get shot off there. I mean, it was 3 or 4 years ago, we caught a guy poaching and he pled guilty to 47 bucks in 1 year. Now that's what they found. And I've asked some of his quote unquote friends, how many they thought he shot that year. And he says, dude, that guy shot over 100.
Real quick. I'm sorry. But hold that thought. This is not a problem for us, right?
No, it's recording. I see a little dot up there.
You want me to make sure his is recording too?
Mine says recording.
Yeah, it's fine. It's just that has just not gone away.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, he's good. Yeah,
I
it's
think
hard
he
to
shot
believe.
over 100 in 1 year.
Wow.
What was it? You said
100 poached deer by one guy.
100 bucks. And
wow.
like multiple friends of mine around here, neighbors were like, yeah, I found 4 with their head cut off. I found, I found 3 here. And I mean, it was rampant.
What do you think is the intent? Like, what is the mindset of is it
Just want to kill him.
Well, yeah, is it intentional? Like, I'm after these big bucks and I'm going to go and I'll just get them by any means necessary? Or is it, you know, I've encountered people that I would have said like, oh, that dude's definitely poached deer. And it's just more like, that's just what we do. We just drive around and we shoot deer kind of a thing.
I think there's two things. One, this one was fairly unique where if I had to guess with some information, some of these dudes will find guys who are like, hey, you know, you get a 140-inch deer, I'll pay you $100 for that rack or 150. Well, the meth heads figured that out. And hey,
why are people doing that? What's the
to get money for meth?
Yeah, no. I know. Why would you pay for a 140-inch deer though?
Oh, dude, people.
I don't
crazy.
know, but that's what they were paying, and we found the guy that was buying them.
There's a pile of guys that'll buy, 70-inch sheds, 60-inch sheds. They just want antlers. Yeah. Yep.
So even $30, man, that gets me by for tonight. Now, is that everywhere? Well, probably not. But
it's in
there's
a lot of America right now.
Yeah, there's a lot of small towns with some people desperate. Oh, I can get $50 for this. Let's go.
I'm sure it's my Southeast Ohio issue.
And then the other group, I think, is like the people who have let the obsession of I want to show people a giant buck. I want to post this buck. I want to show my friends that I shot this giant. And it's how dudes that, you know, poach one and post it on Facebook and get pinched. Like, you're like, are you that stupid? They just crave that so badly.
Yeah, just attention.
You know, yes. And then they make stupid choices, and they, you know, big bucks make people clearly do really, really stupid things.
Oh yeah.
And I think they just crave that so much. But I think the people I know that have shot lots of big deer don't crave that, actually. You know, if you're consistently shooting giant bucks, in my opinion, you're doing it because you love it. And it's not about posting attention.
You almost crave like the opposite of like a poaching experience. It's like everything about that just feels gross. It's like you're doing it the wrong way. Even if you get it, that's where I'm trying to like understand it. It's like, you know, big antlers are just big antlers. I've held plenty of go to the Iowa Deer Classic. You can hold as many as you want. What good is it if you didn't like do it the right way?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
It's just a different mind of thinking. It no different than, and I don't mean this in a bad way to spook or someone. It's no different than paying somebody to put you on a deer that you go and kill a big deer. Like it's just a different attachment. It's the end result, not the journey.
And a lot of people would throw stones at that. You know, one is very much legal for me to say, whether you like it or not. You know, I wouldn't outlaw it. If I was a dictator, I could make the laws. I wouldn't outlaw, like, you can't pay somebody to go hunt that land, or, you know, you can't do that, but it's legal. There's a big difference. You know, you go shoot one out a truck window. I got a big problem with that, you know, and that's the most egregious. And I think, in my opinion, based on a heck of a lot of experience, and I'm here every day, I think that stuff goes on in about every neighborhood in Iowa, in the rural areas, especially. Like, you know, people are long gone. Hey, I'm back home. If they don't live on the farm or something, and I'll be outside an hour after dark, and you hear rifle shots, and I know what's going on. I see guys. I've seen guys shoot out truck windows and spotlighting, and now, you know, I see a guy without any lights on that shot one that clearly was a thermal, chased him down. That was maybe 2 years ago. And then I just, you know, I get feedback from the DNR. What are things like on the poaching situation? Where's the biggest problems? And I think it's still widespread. I think, you know, trail cameras have actually helped in the poaching part of it, where, well, if I actually go on that farm, there's a good chance my photograph's going to get taken, and trespassing. And I think that's one benefit of trail cameras that has reduced some poaching and trespassing.
Yeah, not all of it. Yeah, I think it's one of those things too, you know, and the reason I asked if you thought it was a big issue, because, you know, although it's like talked about at the state level and stuff, like, number one, you know, 99% of those poachers sure as shit aren't buying a hunting license, right? Like, they're already breaking the law. They're not going to buy a license usually. And number two is like, think about the amount of deer being harvested by poachers from a cumulative standpoint. Like it becomes significant. If one dude kills $100 in a year, you know, and let's say the average success rate for a hunter is what, I don't know, 5%, right? Like that, you know, essentially that's a pile of hunters being in that area effectively.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I think poaching and shady stuff is prevalent enough in the fact that I think this is a statement we've all heard a million times. Like, if I shoot a big deer, I don't want to post it. I don't even want to talk about it. You'll hear some guys say that because they're like, I know I'm going to get accused of things. I know people are going to say stupid comments like,
well, Spook told us directly, Skip, he's like, I will not take a deer out of the state of which I kill it until the statute of limitations is over. And he's like, I could give you the names of a lot of other celebrities doing the exact same thing. They'll get replicas made until the statute of limitations run out. Then they'll bring it back.
Yeah. Luckily I don't, I mean, I guess
you're there,
Kansas, but but watch this. Here's case in point. I'll post the buck. I'll post it because I like sharing. I think that part's fun. If I couldn't share it with people, you know, I do like sharing, but I don't do it to be like, look at this, look at me.
It's not a braggadocious.
I don't care. Yeah. But it's fun. And I like seeing other people like, dude, look what I got. That's fun. But I'll go post it on Iowa Whitetail, Instagram. Yep. Iowa Whitetail, I'll have no negative comments because it's good dudes that are not lunatics. If I post that on, say, Facebook or Instagram, there's going to be comments. I'm predicting the future. There's going to be comments like from the lunatic non-hunters. It'll be like, that's evil. You're they should kill you. You know, I mean, like, shame on you. Yeah. And then, but that's from the non-hunters. So there'll be comments from those people like, you're sick and disgusting. And then the crazy lunatic liberals will say that stuff. Mm-hmm. And then from the hunters, you know, you'll see stuff like
high fence deer,
high fence, or rich guy,
corn pile, crossbow.
Yeah, I mean, whatever. And then the ones I do feel bad about, like a guy I'll know that I'm like, he did this legitimately. Like, I heard he poached that, and they'll like start the rumor mill or something.
That's it.
It's like, dude, who wants to hear that stuff?
Yeah.
And when hunters have a lot of negative feedback, or they have the feeling like, if I post this, I'm going to get raked through the coals, in a way that makes it kind of not fun for people. And I've got thick skin, so if somebody throws that at me, whatever, I just will probably laugh.
You know the truth. So
exactly. But you know, for some of these other people, maybe it's their first big buck and they're going to get raked through the coals, and other people see that and they're like, this hunting stuff's for the birds, man. Look at how nasty these guys are to each other. I just think there's a line that gets crossed. I don't mind hunters debating things. I don't mind hunters, you know, talking about ethics or talking about regulations or debating things, whatever, even passionately, but there's a line that gets crossed with people.
Well, jealousy is a disease, is where it comes down for a lot of people. It's like, you know, you're not doing it in a bragging way, but the moment you post that, and it doesn't have to be a 200-incher, it could be a 150-inch deer. Like it immediately, there are people looking to tear you down. Because
no doubt, that's
just how humans are built.
Well, and why it's sad is a lot of people are looking for affirmation. I mean, that's why you post things to social media. Like,
yeah,
you know, and it's not wrong, but it is based on insecurity. I mean, the reason
it's not a great place to look.
The reason that you post things to
social
social media, is for affirmation. Well, yeah, I mean, you want people to say, "Oh, that's a great deer," you know, and people will, and that's going to make you feel good.
Yeah,
you know?
But there will also be a lot of people that will find a way to tear you down because they're just unhappy with their own life.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. And when you get older, you understand that stuff. But let's just say you're a 21-year-old kid that shoots a big buck.
That's confusing, man.
What's wrong with the world? Why are all these people lunatics on Facebook?
Yeah, it's I mean, I've seen that. I've seen it with like kids doing it and stuff. You know, it's just like, you know, whatever, like you know, not a great shot. And I'm like, fucking kid's 8 years old, like way off or something.
And those people saying those things, not a great shot. Are you telling me you never did? You've never had it where you didn't make a great shot?
Well, that's the only reason they would say it. Right?
Is that the stone you want to throw?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Usually, a lot of these comments are hypocritical, and
it's all it is, man.
And even attacking other hunters, and this has nothing to do with any specific person, but a hunter who made a mistake or did this or that. I think hunters should be maybe just a touch more careful to be like, dude, are you perfect?
Yeah.
Are you really? Have you ever? And have I shot a buck out of a truck window? Egregious stuff? No, I have not, and it will never happen. Something egregious like that. But if you want to go and nitpick, have I done this? Am I perfect? No, I'm not. Mm-hmm. And neither are you, and neither are any of these other people making comments. So give these people a little bit of grace, even if they did make a mistake.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, it's like, listen, if you're going to say something, just be nice and supportive of it. If you have time to like make a super negative comment on it, it's like, what are you doing with your life, dude? Like really? Like you're going to sit there and have thought through these 5 sentences that you're going to write that are all negative for what reason? What do you hope? Do you hope to get affirmation out of it to say, hey man, you know what? You're right. You're pretty awesome. Like, I don't know.
And most of them are probably this dude in mom and dad's basement with Dorito stains on his t-shirts and in his underwear that probably weighs 300 pounds. That's never kissed a girl.
Yeah, I mean, shoots really. A crossbow.
Yes.
What? Huh?
I don't know. And it's bad at this time of year too. Like, cause there's a lot of deer getting killed and stuff. And it's just, I mean, I just read through some of it. And I mean, on the other side of things, like we kind of talked about it on our, I guess our hunt companion last week, but you got things like the CJ Alexander thing where it's like, that.
Did you see that?
Yeah.
That whole deal.
Yeah.
We kind of talked about it briefly.
Yeah. I don't pay that, So my view is I skim over that. I just look at it. Oh, dude made some bad choices. Okay, he's going to deal with it.
Yeah.
Whatever. Doesn't impact me. Probably not a good thing for our sport.
Definitely not.
But for me, fundamentally, like this isn't an ego thing for me. I could care less about that. And to be honest, I'm super happy when I see other people send me a big deer, like, dude, I got it done. I've been working at this. And if somebody said, there's only this many gigantic deer, do you wish there was more so more people could have that experience like you did? Yes. I wish there was more. I wish it was better for everybody. I wish every state was improved. I wish the age class was better. I wish that deer like this weren't so rare, like unicorns this year. Like, no, there's actually a few around. Mm-hmm. Every county might have half a dozen giants get shot there. I wish it was just better everywhere. So it's the my feeling is, it's the exact opposite of my own self, my own ego, my own desires. I wish it was better for everybody and other people could experience this because, like I said, it's not about ego. It was about one of the most fun experiences I've had this year for, the earthly things that we do. It's just a fantastic memory that I'll have for the rest of my life. Son will have for the rest of his life. And I hope more people can do the same thing.
Yeah. No, I think that's cool, man. And I mean, like you said, at least, your son sitting there witnessing that is aware of all the effort and time that goes into even potentially making an experience like that happen. Right. I mean, it's not like, sure, people can trip on them. Like there's plenty of people that will trip on a 200 and kill them probably this year even, but not very likely.
No, the consistency on gigantic, old, mature deer. And that's what I honestly, if somebody said, well, do you have standards? Do you target certain things? Yeah. And it's age class. It's not score. I shot a 7-year-old last year that I don't know what he scores. He's a great deer, but he certainly wasn't 200, but it's the age class. I think that's cool to be like, I outsmarted the biggest, oldest deer that survived all these seasons. And that's what's fun for me. Not saying that's what's fun for other people, but I love that part.
I think it's really cool that your son get to see it. I was just thinking about like what it must be like as how old was your son?
13.
As a 13-year-old, to see your dad, like somebody that I'm sure you've disciplined him, right? And he like, and he's got a lot of respect for you. He's seeing you like whatever, all these things that that you think about, that's your dad or whatever, and it's like, man, as you really look up to them and stuff. How cool is it for him to get to see you and like just pure excitement, like the most excited probably maybe that he's ever seen you. You know what I mean? It's like, and to witness you in that mode, I think that's pretty cool.
Well, and to add on, like, I think probably with the way that you've taken him up the ladder, he actually can appreciate that deer, right? Like if you would have just let him kill like 180s when he was whatever, 8 or 9 years old, I'm not saying he wouldn't appreciate it, but it'd be a little bit tougher to appreciate what he just witnessed.
Yeah, it was an amazing experience. And that was an experience I did not have growing up. So that's something different for my son, where I say, my son is sitting here in a blessed situation for hunting and so on. And some of that is a negative, where it's just like, I don't want it to be too good for him, or to him to have a false perception of what the rest of the hunting's like. But on the flip side of that, I wasn't able to see my dad do this. I didn't spend time with my dad in the woods. He didn't hunt. My parents didn't hunt. I was in this, and now I have good memories of my childhood, no doubt about it. But I didn't have anything like this growing up. I didn't have somebody to teach me how to hunt. I didn't have somebody to tell me, don't do all these dumb things. I had to figure that out on my own. Yeah. And I'm thankful for it. I wouldn't change a darn thing.
Yep.
But there's some dynamics there, I think, that are pretty cool for my son. And yeah, he's got a good mom and dad that teach him good lessons, that are not going to let that kid have an ego. He's going to be appreciative. He's hardworking. Mm-hmm. He works for everything he has. He gets disciplined. There's a lot of kids out there that don't have that too. And a far deeper issue, of course. But,
sure.
I wish more kids had that ability to get into this. And for all the people that are like, yeah, I wish there was less hunters out there, and I won't open that can of worms. But, just think about it. All these kids that have passions and kind of intense personalities, maybe like me, getting them into hunting would keep so many kids from getting into other stuff. Mm-hmm. And some of my buddies that did have the intense personalities, that didn't have a dad, didn't have anybody to bring them out, didn't have a place to go, so they got into really bad stuff.
Yeah.
And had I not found hunting, had I not been like, I want to walk through the woods and just walk around and try and hunt, who knows what the heck I would have got into. Because with this personality,
that's dangerous.
Yeah. So just really think about that with the youth. We want our youth, with the right motives, captivated with this, and they're going to be the kids that are going to take the best care of the land someday when they're the stewards of the resource. And the more kids that get into this, I do think it's better for society, and it's going to keep a lot of kids from getting on the wrong path in life.
Yep, I agree.
The HUNTR Podcast is brought to you by Better Backstrap.
Well, one thing that's undeniable, man, is you and I both like to eat. And so we're going to be partnering with the Better Backstrap this year to have the best seasonings possible for our meat this summer.
Yeah. Well, dude, when it comes to venison, it's like you've heard me talk about before. It's like, what does the preparation for all this look like and stuff? And it's like, I really want to make a point of eating more venison moving forward. And some of the Better Backstrap mixtures have made it super easy.
Yeah. And so we've got kind of 3 core mixtures. You've got your original Better Backstrap, which is for that grilling of your backstrap or tenderloins or anything like that. You've got your classic taco mix.
Can't go wrong with tacos.
Can't go wrong with that. And then you've got your standard SPG in the orange can.
Well, SPG and down the hatch.
There you go. So right now, if you go to betterbackstrap.com, you can use the code HUNTR15 to get 15% off any of your orders on the seasonings, and there'll probably be more coming out here throughout the year.
Get yourself a Better Backstrap.
Well, buddy, we appreciate you spending some time with us this morning. How's the harvest coming? Pretty good?
Yeah, it's really good.
Getting
really
there?
Good. Corn is better than beans. Pretty well done. The guy running the combine right now was clearly texting me and calling me while we were on this. And he's like, didn't you want to leave some stuff right here for the critters? Where? And I'm like, oh, geez, I hope he doesn't goof this one up.
Yeah, he's like, I left you a row.
Yeah.
And it's
2
gone.
rows of beans.
It's gone.
Yeah, it's all good. I mean, I don't have anything left to hunt, so I guess we can just, doesn't matter at this point.
Well, that's what I was gonna say. What is the what's the rest of the season look like for Skip Sly?
All right, so everybody's like, hey, I put on a poker face and I got a BS. I can't tell people about giant deer. I do not have another giant to hunt. I asked my brother, I said, there's that giant 8-point. That's super cool. He's just got a lot of character and big brows. And I asked him, I said, would you shoot him if he walked in front of you now that I shot the deer I did? He's like, yeah, I would. I'm like, maybe I'll go after him.
Yeah.
But, in full honesty, in full transparency, part of me goes, who else could I let go hunt for that deer? That would be like, oh, that made my season. And he's a cool buck.
Yeah.
And part of me does go that way. And a lot of times that's what I do. I mean, I would be fully content if you're like, you can only shoot one buck a year here. And you shoot a giant. And this year it's more easy to say.
Right.
If I only shot 1 220s to 230s inch buck a year, I'd be fully content.
Me too. Yeah. I think I could probably be okay with that.
I was thinking a lifetime.
I could be okay with that.
Yeah, that sounds great.
Just every year, but
it's a humble request
for me to shoot one big buck a year. Fine, even if it's far less scoring. So what I do, since we get too many tags in Iowa, and I personally wish it would be less, I can shoot 3, and then if I want to party hunt, I can shoot as many tags as I can get, and then if I want to go urban hunting, I can get another buck tag there. So yeah, I can only shoot 25 bucks a year. I mean, legitimately, I can go get urban plus 3. I can get 4.
Yeah,
4 buck tags. Well, if I shoot 1, I'm content. Mm-hmm. Good. Maybe shoot another doe for the freezer, and then what I will do is I'll find the lowest scoring buck on the farm, like a deer where I'm like, I'm not going to ask my buddy to put his tag on that. I'm not even going to ask anybody. And I will hunt for the lowest scoring deer on the farm. And my brothers have a competition with us, our group. We just say, see who wins this year. And I don't know how we did it, but big body, age, and the lowest scoring buck, like a little, like 6-point that's like 8 years old, just gnarly looking. That's what I'll target.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I'm after. I'm after the lowest scoring buck I could find.
Yeah.
So cool. Less than 100 inches and 6, 7, 8 years old would be like,
that's the money.
Perfect.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I'm after.
That's pretty cool.
I do wish I had another buck tag for that. Literally, that buck you're describing, I've got him.
Okay. You guys have an Iowa tag this year.
We do.
And that buck I described, that 6-point,
Yep.
that's 7 years old.
Yeah.
I'd let you guys get on them if you wanted.
Yeah. We'll probably pass.
Zone 4? Wrong zone. Bummer.
On October 17th, I'm passing.
We'll text you
on December 31st, I'd be like,
we'll text you when we get out there. Yeah.
He's still running around.
That's too funny. You sent us that pin the other day, dude. Which I guess I wasn't that surprised, but you're like, I got this sweet permission on this place. We'll see.
Me and 5 of my buddies will be in there.
Just driving them out.
Yeah, we're going to pound it. So there's another group that comes in there sometime in November. So our idea is to get in there before them and just pound the farm.
Right.
And hopefully get a crack at all the bucks.
Mm-hmm.
So this next group, I don't know who it is.
Yeah, I don't know.
This next group that gets there,
they're going to be screwed.
Yeah.
SOL.
Yeah. They're going to hunt their balls off, though.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I would have to say that if we have to wrap it up, Skip, it's like, who would have thought, 20, 25 years ago, Skip from Michigan is sitting behind a deer like you just sat behind here a couple days ago. That's.
I think there's some people where I grew up, older people are like, man, that kid's going to be in jail. That's what they would have thought.
Yeah.
But yeah, no doubt about it. Shooting little basket rack bucks. I never thought this kind of stuff would ever happen either.
To be honest, and we talked about it with your kid, but I really do, and Jared and I are in the same way. It's like those deer early in the career set the tone for the appreciation for something like that, without a doubt.
Yeah, the amount of times my mom dropped me off where I'm like, for a whole week straight, I just froze my butt off and didn't see a deer, and I went again and did it the next day. Years of it. And then finally, like a blind squirrel, you just kind of fall into finding a nut.
Mm-hmm.
And that's literally how I started. And yeah, I'm thankful that I got into this. Clearly, I love it. I mean, it's not the most important thing in my life, but certainly for my free time, hobbies, things to do with family and friends. This is, I don't think I need to describe that I'm made up with it.
No, I don't think so, man.
Skip, where do we get one of those Iowa whitetail hats? Are those like available on the website?
They are.
People
you're
can
coming
buy
to
'em?
Iowa, so I'll have some for you.
All right.
That's what we need to kill a 220-inch deer, apparently.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we put a 240 minimum. Anybody that shoots a 240-inch or bigger gets a free hat.
Our expectations are, I'd say they're high at this point, but reasonable.
What are they?
Boy,
I don't know. I mean, I'd say we're trying to kill. I mean, we're definitely coming to kill a mature buck. If there is a score attached to it, I'd say it's 160.
I don't know what to think right now. We haven't had much news show up since early on. Like, we kind of got an inventory pretty early on.
Yeah, I mean, like out of the gate, fast and heavy. It's
kind of shaken out, but there's definitely more uncertainty with the Iowa stuff than with any of our other.
We've got some
farms.
cameras down, so we don't know.
Yep. Yeah, definitely. There's absolutely things we don't know, including that piece we just talked about there. I'm like, who knows? And fortunately, there's cameras on it as of recently, so maybe we'll know. But
it's changing by the day.
Yeah.
I see new bucks coming in to different farms daily, and I mean, I have a farm. Okay, a little farm down the road there, a little farm down the road there. Awful hunting, not great, but a little bit of timber here, a little bit of timber there. Where and I hunt those farms, and all of a sudden, the cornfield just came out to the north of there, and boom, there's a new buck in there, mid-October, late October, and he stays there for the rest of the season. So things are very fluid, and they're changing as we speak right now. And then clearly, anytime in November, the whole month of November, something can show up that had never been on that farm before.
Yeah.
Yep. Any one of those days.
So I think that's why we're kind of we're looking at those 5th through the 12th dates at this point, just because of
weather dependent,
how it's going to fall out. And we actually, and I should remind people on this podcast as well, to vote on the 5th.
Yeah.
We for whatever reason, I was thinking it was the 3rd. I was like, we're good. We'll vote and then we'll go.
Nope. Tuesday the 5th.
I can't believe those stats. At least 30% up to 50% of hunters, Christians, and gun owners don't vote.
Insane.
You're the ones most at threat here. What are you doing?
Yes, it's crazy. It's crazy.
So yeah, we just we just put in for our mail-ins.
And to clarify, vote for Trump. Yeah. Most people want to say just vote. Like, well, no, vote for Trump. Vote for Trump.
But Waltz was pheasant hunting the other day.
Oh, geez.
He's a hunter.
Did you see him trying to load his gun? Holy cow.
Unbelievable.
I think it's so funny when people they want to be politically like unbiased. They're like, well, just vote. And they're like, but they're giving you that. I'm like, oh, yeah, but
yeah, red, right?
Yeah. Okay. Vote for Trump. Let's be clear.
Guaranteed,
not the
100%. I will deliver Iowa. Will not even be close. I'll make sure I got Iowa.
I know. You got to come to Pennsylvania and help us out.
I wish we could.
You guys.
I wish we could deliver it for sure. I just don't know.
I need to count on you.
You know what, Skip?
Pennsylvania.
You got it figured out, man. I'm saying this jokingly, obviously, but Skip gets to be the guy that's like gets to tout it from the river for the state that's already doing everything right.
Yeah, they're red. They've got bucks.
They've already got the giant deer.
They're going in the right direction.
Maybe we should all learn from Skip and that.
Yeah, I don't know. I have confidence in everything but Pittsburgh and Philadelphia in this damn state, and they carry a lot of weight. So we'll just have to see.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, it's the same way. It really is the same way in every state. It's just how much influence do the big cities have. But, it's the same thing when I grew up in Michigan.
Yep.
Detroit carried that state.
Yep.
And Detroit, essentially, I mean, look at Detroit. It's a disaster. It's like, it's like Cleveland.
Yeah.
It's a mess. So just like Chicago carries Illinois, but you go, Chicago is so much of the population of Illinois that the rural people can't even compete.
They don't compete.
Pennsylvania, it's at least a little more balanced where you have, you have half lunatics and you have half normal people.
Oh yeah.
And you just hope you can get a little bit more of the normal people to vote and a little bit less of the lunatics to vote. And, I think if everything was run on the up and up and done perfectly, which in the big cities, I've been around them too often and too long, the shenanigans in big cities, it's unbelievable.
Yeah.
I don't even want to imagine the corruption and law breaking and all the stuff that goes on, and not just with voting, but just in general, the corruption in big cities is so rampant, and they don't care.
No, they don't. And I mean, as much as I don't necessarily love the pressure for our state, I do believe it will come down to this state.
Yeah, agreed.
And what's your gut?
Did you watch that Fox News interview the other day? That was pretty terrible. I don't think enough people will watch it, but I mean, that's her.
I think it's going to be a nail biter, Skip. Yeah. And I think it'll be like literally like a 50.1 to 49.9. And my guess, and I'm saying this mainly because I think Pennsylvania had a pretty good heart for Kennedy, is that it'll be 50.1 to Trump. But it's going to be that razor freaking thin.
Which means that it'll really be, we voted way more, but without the foul play, that's where it'll land.
Yep. So that's where I'm at. I do think Pittsburgh's got, Pittsburgh, that county might not necessarily be red, but I do think that there'll be more people in Pittsburgh that vote red than Philadelphia for sure. And if we can carry some of Pittsburgh, that'll be what puts you over the top.
Being kind of pro-Trump here, I mean, we better, talk about the elephant in the room. There's probably 2 or 3 listeners who are offended on listening to this podcast.
There'll be more than that. I had this sitting
more than 2 or 3.
When I first bought this hat, I had it sitting just like that, not even talking about it, just sitting there. And there were quite a few people that were, quote, disappointed that I brought politics into the podcast.
Oh. And I get it. I mean, I want to be respectful of the other side. Now, we'll have some liberals post on Iowa Whitetail, and I make my comments, but I definitely want to hear their voice. I'm definitely respectful when I meet them. I think they're clearly wrong on a federal level. And yeah, I mean, think about the dynamics of why is it that probably 90% of hunters are voting for Trump and not voting for Harris. At least think through the dynamics of why these groups are voting the way they do. Even if you're liberal, think of why is that? It's not because we're stupid. I assure you that.
Yeah.
There's some very valid reasons for it.
Well, and possibly being hypocritical in this statement. If you have paid attention to anything in this campaign from a mainstream side, recognize how likely powerful and influential media platforms are going to be in this election. Like if you watch, to your point, like, the Fox News with Kamala, and you're like, well, think about the ABC, the CNN, like all of these other things that are reaching millions and millions and millions and millions of people. I mean, if you turn on, and I'm not knocking, like this isn't a position thing, but if you turn on like Good Morning America in the morning, they will trash talk the hell out of Trump every morning. Every morning, 5 days plus a week, every morning. And it's like, think about that platform, or Taylor Swift saying, here's who I'm going to vote for. Think of the power that those media platforms have in today's election versus, 20 years ago even. Like 20 years ago, like it was very muddled. It's not very muddled of which way these media's, platforms are trying to push you.
And at least I do believe the fact is that their credibility has tanked so badly for how biased it's so obvious how biased they are.
I want to believe that people understand that, Skip, but I just don't. I think
the people who watch it don't.
I think they're watching the news. They believe that's the news. It's crazy.
But, I think there's enough people that have said, I don't even want to get my news from there anymore. And I'm going to look at alternative outlets. I'm going to watch stuff on YouTube. I'm going to be on Twitter, X, and they just said, to heck with it. I want to hear different views, podcasts, Joe Rogan, stuff like that. I think there's so many other outlets, which is maybe the saving grace. on
Maybe.
free enterprise of ideas and news sources, because the mainstream corporate media, certainly in my mind, doesn't have any credibility, and I'd say probably half the country would feel the same about that too. It is absolutely a problem. But
well, for what it's worth, if you're listening to this, I think it was on Spotify, people have wrote in and told us multiple times that Harris and Waltz are running a pile of commercials over this podcast as we speak. So,
well, they probably are, and
they are,
and they're smart too, because if they realize that like 30% of hunters are not voting, of course they would advertise to a on the fence community, as it would seem. You know,
so very possible that they've advertised over this thing. And just for our, like, I can't, if somebody's like, why don't you stop them? I'm like, how?
You can't. Yeah.
I don't know.
This is our act of counter advertising here.
Yeah. So, yeah, that's it.
Cool.
Get out there and vote. That's
Very
it.
good.
That's all I had. Sorry. I thought, did you think I had something else to follow?
No.
Okay.
Nope. That's it for me.
get after it, guys.
Okay, man. Well, we appreciate it, Skip. Congrats on the buck.
Thanks for coming on, man.
And,
Been looking for an excuse to have you back on for a while now. So
yeah, we'll see you out there in Iowa here in a couple weeks, hopefully.
I love it. Give it everything, and good luck when you're out here.
All right, buddy. Thanks.
See you, brother. The HUNTR Podcast is brought to you by Quest Hunt Co.
Man, it seems like as technology and social media and stuff just gets incorporated into our daily lives in the deer season more and more, it's like we're always looking for ways to just dial it back, spend more quality time with deer hunters, and really make deer hunting and deer camps great again.
Yeah, and I mean, we've all been part of that annual buck pull, whether it's at your camp or the local fire department, and we're trying to bring that feeling back with Quest Hunt Co. to be able to compete against other people in your state, but also be part of a national competition.
You can sign up in as many states as you want to enter deer that at the end are going to get scored, and you have an opportunity to win some big prizes. And there's an in-person banquet in February that Jeremy and I are going to be at, where those prizes are going to get held out. I think we're going to do some sort of whatever, live podcast or speaking. We'll figure that out. But just looking forward to spending time with people who sign up for the tournament.
Yeah, so you can go to Quest Hunt Co. and sign up. Use the code HUNTR15 at checkout. They'll save you a little bit of money, and then hopefully we'll be able to see you in Missouri in February of 25 at the annual convention.
To make this season a quest.
Pretty cool.
Oh, yeah, dude.
Skip Sly killing 220 pluses.
Man, that's the dream, though. You know, I mean, that's to watch a deer from 2 years old to.
It's amazing. Yeah, I mean, if I think about the number of deer that, you know, at 2 or 3, I'm like, man, that could be a stud, and then never to be heard from again. You know.
Well, it happened. It's so rare, you know. And Skip's fortunate to have the opportunity to, like he said, you know, pass 5-year-old 200-inch deer that he just feels like. And he was very good, I think, about saying, like, listen, I realize this is like almost nobody gets to do this, but he's like, you can, you know, just be familiar with the animals to the point to realize, like, I think he's got more in him. I think, and to have the opportunity to give him another year or two
that's
like
the thing.
that.
You got to be very confident in that you're either, and it's a 50-50 shot, right? You're going to pass him in hopes that he makes it another year and gets bigger. At the same time, you're going to pass him in hope that he actually survives.
Literally 50-50. I mean, even looking at him the following year, it's like, you know, first of all, he didn't improve from 5 to 6.
Almost died, it sounds like.
Almost died, you know, so it's a gamble, you know, but
gambles pay off. And I mean, when you're in that kind of a situation and or you've killed that many deer or you've got a lot of land, like there's a lot of factors that play. I mean, it kind of goes back to our discussions probably years ago at this point, where we're like, you know, what happens to these deer? Like, I'm sure they die, but I'm also sure that some of these deer didn't die maybe the year after we thought, you know, when we're like, they didn't show up, they're dead. Maybe they moved. Maybe they are off property. You know, maybe they got bumped out. Like, there's just so many things, especially when you're talking about a 2 or 3 or even a 4-year-old like stud type buck, that it's like, yes, deer die naturally and or from human intervention, car, hunting, whatever. But I think that more of these deer exist than we think. I mean, I showed you that picture from Ohio the other day. Deer that I thought was probably the future of my farm as a 3-year-old in 2022. You know, last year I had zero history, zero pictures. And yes, I was timbering, but like even in the off season, like nothing. Deer was gone. I figured he was dead. Why wouldn't I? Like he was there quite a bit in 22, was not there at all in 23. And my neighbor sends me a picture and he's a stud 5-year-old in 24.
The picture is from your neighbor.
Yep. And he's probably right off of my property. And again, I'm running SD cam, so maybe he is on my property now. he usually beds in between us. And I haven't checked those cameras, so I don't know. But good chance he is on those cameras, and he's on my property, and he's probably mid-60s as a 5-year-old. And it's like perfect case in point where I wasn't even thinking about that deer this year. And like, there he is. He's survived 3. This is the 3rd season now. And it's like, okay, it's encouraging. Like they can get through. Then it starts bringing my brain back to some of these other deer. I'm like, well, where the hell did they go then? Did they die or did they make it? Like, that
is the cool part about this season. And I mean, it gives you some optimism. Even in the end there afterwards, we're talking with Skip about like Iowa. And I'm like, oh, there's a lot of unknowns. But I'm like, that comes with the optimism of like, dude,
there's a lot of unknowns.
They will move in. It's not just like what you have is what you have.
Yep.
It's like that's what November is all about, you know?
Well, even this latter, I mean, people listen to this
right now.
24. It's now. Like, I mean, I had...
Dude, that buck, the Lebowski buck that I was hunting,
yep.
Granted, I did see him once over the summer, but totally random. I had no idea he would be. I have no idea.
Yep.
Had that not happened, I would not have known. I'm like, I don't know. That deer's old. He probably died at some point. But there he was, October 16th at 2:30 in the afternoon. And you're like, here we go.
I had a Pennsylvania buck 3 or 4 mornings ago show up that this is the 3rd season. He's probably 5 this year, 130-inch 9-point. But it's Pennsylvania. There's 3 seasons that he's survived now that he's back again. And, my neighbor's telling me that he's seeing a big one in Kentucky. We'll find out. Like, it's not all hope is lost. That said, deer will disappear on you at this time as well.
I got one right now. Dude, that triple brow buck. We got his sheds. You know what I mean? Like he lived to that point, and like I guess I'm kind of assuming he's dead, but like as we're sitting here talking about it, he very easily just he might not be. He might just be off property.
It's just he's off property. He shifted. He's gonna get pulled through. I mean, potentially he died, or potentially somebody shot him already. But it's like, when you really start to put forth, especially a good deer, like when you start to think about the odds of that and not hearing about it, little by little, it kind of creeps back into like, he's probably still out there somewhere.
Yeah.
Maybe the social dynamic shifted on the property and he lost, he's out of it. Like whatever. There's so many factors that I think we just don't understand as hunters and deer managers to be like, definitively the deer's dead, right? There are plenty of cases where we think it's going to happen. And obviously if somebody says, here he is, here's the picture, other than that, there's no proof, they're just deer do die and deer do disappear and deer do shift. But, I think it's, you have to look at the glass half full and say the unknown is the optimism, not the unknown is like, it's not good.
Mm-hmm.
And that's it, and if that's how you have to, at least approach the next couple weeks here. As you get closer to the end of November, then things start to shake out in reality. But there's a lot of like surprise unknowns that are exciting here in the next couple weeks that, if you're out there hunting or running cameras, like you should be seeing.
Yeah, it's going to get interesting. So we should leave everybody with Skip's number 1 rule is put your harness on, clip on at the bottom of your tree and stay attached as often as you can. There's too many people.
Yep.
Getting hurt these days, so that should be priority number 1. And
and if you got kids, and I don't know if they're still selling them, I actually bought one of the old school muddy Bill Winke kid harnesses. I think Kicking Bear actually was a partner, and so Harlan was wearing that the other day when we were in the tree stand. But don't shortchange on your kids. Make sure that whether they're small or not, like that you get a harness on them, even if it's a cheap one. Something's better than nothing type of thing.
Yeah.
So, but
whatever they're called. Lifelines or whatever.
Yep, safe lines, lifelines.
Those are a worthwhile investment. Yep. I mean, they're a little bit expensive.
Clip on when you start and clip on. Yeah,
slide all the way up, or a lineman's belt if you're hanging and hunting. I always have one of those with me.
Yeah, if you're, I saw somebody just recently fell out of a climber. Man, if you're in a climber, all you gotta do is put your rope tether around.
It's 2024.
You should never be not connected. I mean, just slide it up as you're climbing. It's an easy thing to do. A lot of us, me included, I get rushed and I don't think about it, but just be smart, or
buy a hang on. It's 2024.
Yeah. So anyways, we appreciate everybody listening to this episode with Skip Sly, and we'll catch y'all next week.
Later.
Take me